What was your "this person is on another level of stupid" moment? I locked my purse with my keys and cell phone in my apartment. I went to the office to ask maintenance to let me in. The woman at the desk said she would call maintenance and asked for a phone number they could reach me at. I said there wasn't one because my cell phone was locked in my apartment. She insisted she needed a number. I said I could give her the number, but that I wouldn't be able to answer if they called. She suggested I get my phone out of my apartment so that I could answer when they called. I rolled my eyes at her and said if I could get in my apartment to get my cell phone I wouldn't need maintenance to let me in. She never did understand me, but maintenance did show up 10 minutes later. Update: since a lot of people are asking, you don't need a key to lock the door to the apartment, just to unlock it. On the way out the door, I turned the lock on the back of the door knob and then pulled the door shut, locking the door. I had put my keys in my purse because I was also carrying a laptop bag and a few other things. I thought I picked up my purse with the other bags, but I hadn't. Yes, I know I was stupid for locking myself out. Thank you, kind stranger, for the gold. This was my first experience in retail, where I learned what many customers would be like. Seasons were changing, so we put a lot of shirts we had to get rid of in the front and made them 50% off. I was working the register when a woman came up to buy her things. I rang her up and could see a look on her face, like something was wrong. That's when the following happened. Lady, why is this so much? Me, pardon me? Lady, this should only be $10, not $20. I thought that maybe her item was on sale, so I asked if she could point out the sign, because I wasn't aware of it. It was a small store and we didn't have to walk anywhere. Lady, this sign here. Me, this sign says that all shirts are 50% off. Lady, yes, so why is this full price? Me, this is a hat. Summer camp counselor made all the kids on a school bus keep the windows up on a hot day because they could feel the air conditioning coming from the front of the bus. It was so hot, and I, maybe 10 years old at the time, had to explain to the 40-year-old counselor that the air conditioning they were feeling was the wind coming in through the bus driver's open window. She still didn't believe me. I begged her to ask the bus driver to confirm the bus did not have air conditioning, but she didn't want to bother him while he was driving. It was like a 1-hour bus trip. She finally got hot enough and asked the bus driver if the bus had air conditioning, and he jokingly said the bus only has air conditioning when the windows are down and the wheels are turning. She then looked back at me and said, "See, I told you the bus had air conditioning," and proceeded to force us to keep the windows up. I can't use this. I'm left-handed. It was a fucking shovel, and I was the idiot that thought a left-handed shovel existed. Edit. No, I wasn't trying to get out of working. I was literally that stupid I thought I couldn't use it. Edit 2. To give the story a little more depth, what happened was we were digging up the long jump pit in the shot put vector at my school to get it loose for the home meet, and when it was my turn to shovel, some upperclassmen decided to pull a prank and tell me that it was a right-handed shovel, knowing I was left-handed. They sat back and watched the fireworks as I made a fool of myself. Edit 3. Why is this popular? How is this my most liked comment? It couldn't be the one about how pedos get away with fucking kids legally, or the one about a guy groping a girl without her realizing, not even the one about my little sister pushing me down the stairs and getting me in trouble for it. This is it. She thought the capital of Saudi Arabia was hummus. I wish I could make this up. Edit, just to add on to this story and provide context, since it's getting more attention than I thought. When I was in uni, I was in this class and talked to a girl who sat next to me. One day I brought hummus to class and she was like, "Oh, that looks good. What is that?" And I said it was hummus, and she went, "Lol, don't you mean dip? Hummus is the capital of Saudi Arabia." And then I just explained to her that hummus is a type of dip made from chickpeas. Then I offered her some. We were class friends for a little bit, but I had to stop studying with her because we talked about Latin America and poverty in class, and she informed me that to cure Latin America's poverty, Peru should just get rid of Machu Picchu and replace it with a giant resort to attract tourists. That Machu Picchu was too old and no one cared about it anymore. I found new people to study with. Other than that, she was a sweet girl. She just was very ignorant on a lot of things. I've commented this before once or twice, but my stepbrother was baffled that dogs were colorblind because he saw his reflection in our dog's eye, and it was in color, not a black and white reflection. So how could a dog be colorblind? I tried explaining it to him, and I don't think he really got it. Another instance, he thought babies were born aged 1. He's a white dude, and not living in a culture where they do count from 1. I told him now that's not how it works, so he tried to count back from the current year to his birthday year, lost count a few times and got confused, then decided it was an agree to disagree situation, where neither of us could be sure who was right. Bruh. Oh, another thing, he told me he thought every book should have a quick summary of what's happening and who the characters are on every page, because he was sick of picking up a book after a while and forgetting what was happening and who the characters were. Edit. According to commenters, dogs are only red/green colorblind. You learn something new every day. I work in a large furniture factory. There's lots of machinery that could injure you very badly and even kill you. I had been there for about 2 years at this point and I've seen so many people come and go. The turnover was insane. There was this one kid who always seemed to be not the brightest. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt and stop being so judgy. He ended up turning on a blade and sticking his hand into it. The machine is basically a router table, but the router bit isn't just sticking out of the middle of the table. It was attached to a raised back edge on the table with a shroud over it. There's a off/on switch on the side of the table. You can see the table is clearly plugged into an electrical outlet. Anyway, this kid came over to the table and wanted to know what it was. Instead of asking someone who had worked there longer than him, he decided to flip the switch and find out himself. He heard a noise start up after he flipped the switch on and figured that was our air vacuuming dust collection system. Then he decided the best way to get the answers he wanted was to obviously stick his hand in this loud strange hole. He ended up with minor injuries, but refused to take a drug test after the incident, so he was moved to a position that doesn't involve any machinery. My first job out of high school was at a lumber yard. There was one particular job where we had to take boards from the cut trees. They weighed quite a bit due to the moisture still in them, and stack them on a cart to be moved to the yard. The boards we were running were 14-16 foot long and anywhere from 6-24 inch wide. They could weigh anywhere from 100 pounds to 300 pounds. So the last board comes down the line and it's huge, 16 feet long and at least 20 inches wide, weighed every bit of 200 plus. The new guy Brody had his name written on it, so as he went to try and get the board on the cart the only spot left was a 10. He fought for the life of him to get this wide ass board in their tiny space. He slid the board on there, wrestled on side in, but couldn't get the other side to go, so he'd take it off and try it another. After 5 minutes of watching him struggle, he finally asked why it wasn't fitting on the cart. My supervisor tossed a tape measure at him, and Brody proceeded to ask how to use it. Became the running joke for the company until he was fired. 3 businessmen. 2 are upper level muckety mucks for the big bank in the state. Not just VP title, because they hand them out like candy assholes, but actually in charge of the whole enchilada. 3rd guy is the guy who owns the biggest construction biz in the state. He also ran for Senate in Florida, but lost because people actually dug up all the shady shit he did in tax evasion with both personal and business. His company regularly does the fuck me money size building jobs for downtown office towers, etc. These 3 geniuses spent the entire lunch I waited on them arguing how many holes a female human has between her legs. Not as a punchline, not as a only half joke, but an hour-long Socratic debate. For the record, as anyone who has even a tiny semblance of knowledge of human anatomy, it's 3. Anus, urethra, vagina. One of these fuckers literally was on the side of only one physical opening, which tells me that this waste of oxygenated blood has never watched porn or performed anything sexual beyond shove my cock in and make myself feel good. I literally wanted to go call his wife and offer my services. Edit. Forgot to make clear that none of these 3 guys actually said 3 holes. One was convinced the urethra was ducted into the vagina, and the other, that it was ducted into the anus. The third just apparently thought that women have a cloaca. I work for an environmental company as their vacuum truck operator. I was the only one at our branch that knew how to operate the truck, so I told my boss that wasn't smart BC what it. I quit one day, or got fired or died. He agreed and let me train this guy Skip. Skip didn't have much going on upstairs, but he was all I was offered, so. Anyway, first job we do together is this big factory. There's a pit under a 4'6" grate. The grate has to be lifted up and pulled back to expose the vile crud below. I demonstrate. Okay. Stand back here, lift the grate up, and pull it back toward you in one simple motion like this. I show him, then put the grate back in. It was very heavy, and if you didn't do it right you could get hurt. I hand the hook to Skip. Okay, just like I did. Skip stands on the grate and attempts to lift it up. Whoa, that's really heavy. Skip. Unless you can fucking levitate, that thing's not coming up. I was on a 12-hour flight with someone who'd never flown before. The real point it hit me was when we were a couple hours from our destination. We lower an attitude, and she notices something outside the window. Oh my god, there's icebergs. What? Keep in mind we are flying to the Middle East, and we are above the Mediterranean. There's no way there's icebergs. I look outside and realize in a moment of both disappointment and pity and respond, no, those are clouds. I would have forgotten most of the experience after, but she defends herself. Those are clearly icebergs, she declares. I don't understand, I thought we were going to a desert. How are there icebergs? Is the water that cold? She not only refuses to listen to my pleas that they're in actuality clouds, but then continuously asks me for reasons why they're impossibly there. I eventually give up and just stop talking and leave her to her rambling, knowing eventually we'll go below them and she'll understand then. We start descending, and once our plane flies through her icebergs, she finally goes, "Ooh, there clouds. Oh, were you just being nice?" Girl I recently worked with. She was 17 and this was her first job at a pizza place. I have countless examples, but to preface this, she is the only human I've ever said this is the dumbest human I've ever talked to about. She constantly abbreviated Jalapenos as Hallie. I told her countless times, it's Jal, and every time she'd just write Hallie. Eventually she started writing Galley, and then Jally. After about 3 fucking weeks, she spelled sauce, sasu, and countless other spelling mistakes that were absolutely fucking hilarious. She couldn't fold a pizza box after trying to show her 45 times. She couldn't cut a pizza. One piece would be a foot long and another would be an inch long. She constantly explained tickets to me, no matter how many times I told her I knew how to read, and I've been there longer than her, and I understand the tickets. She couldn't take orders on the phone, because she would constantly hang up on delivery order tickets without getting a name, number, or address. She charged out our $7.99 each for 2 large single topping pizzas as $13 after taxes. I'm not kidding, 8 times, and didn't understand how her math was wrong, and that's what finally got her fired. She wrote on her application that she was homeschooled, but I truly believe she just had to drop out because she was that stupid. I've never been around someone who was unpleasantly dumb until her, and I worry about how the fuck she's going to survive, because she couldn't even make out as a cashier at a pizza place, which I learned how to do in literally 20 minutes on a slow day between making orders. I didn't realize my childhood pet rabbit Rosie hadn't really gone to live on a farm until I was in my early 20s and saw the Sopranos episode where Tony comes to the same realization about his dog. I asked the first girl to ever slept with me to marry me soon afterwards. We were teenagers. I drove a snowmobile straight off a cliff and broke my back when I was 15. I was installing an electric dog fence in my teens, and I had to do something with my hands. So I put the electric leads between my teeth for a moment, activated the power, and shocked myself in the face. The electricity clamped my jaw muscles shut, and I had to rip the wires out of my teeth. When I was a kid I wanted to make skid marks on my bike the way all the other kids could, so I rode as fast as I could down a hill, and slammed on my brakes, and flew right over the handlebars. The paramedic patiently explained to me I had the wrong type of tires on my bike as he made sure I wouldn't die. One time a professor opened up to me after the death of a friend telling me that he got through the hardest times in his life by reading poetry, and I didn't know what to say, so I went, yeah, I hate poetry. When I was 15 I was driving my dad's 6WD truck with a 36-foot trailer on it, with he and his friend in the trailer, and there was a turtle in the road, so I panicked and swerved and put the whole thing in a ditch. When I was a kid we had a subtraction math test, but I accidentally did them all addition, so I just changed all the to plus and hoped the teacher wouldn't notice. When I was in my early 20s I started a new job, and to try to ingratiate myself to the office staff I put up a whiteboard, and a couple times a week I'd put up a new movie quote and try to have people guess it. One day I put up a line from Nick and Nora's Infinite playlist, "I love you so much it's retarded." The next day the board was gone and someone informed me the owner and CEO had a mentally handicapped child. Until a few months ago I didn't think US mail-in ballots got counted unless the election was close. When I was 15 I was batting in baseball and took a pitch to my knuckle, which then broke. I kept batting, wondering why it hurt so much. As a teen I was in gym class and wanted to try the parallel. I'm 6 feet 4 inches and they weren't set high enough, so I came down and hyperextended both my knees as my feet hit the ground. I forgot to take a giant family heirloom hunting knife out of my pocket before going through airport security in Vietnam and panicked and threw it in the trash. There's more, but I want to go to bed. A friend of mine I grew up with told me he was going to vote for Trump back in 2016. I asked him why, and he said he agreed with him about illegal immigration. Now this is a hot button issue. I know we all have differing views on it, and normally I'd be fine with having a civil discussion about what we agree on and disagree on. But this jackass had a girlfriend in Sicily who stayed here in New York too long, so she wasn't allowed back in the country, so he had her fly to Toronto and tried to sneak her over the border. When I told him this, he said no, that was different. It wasn't different. The only difference was that it was him and his Italian girlfriend instead of Mexican strangers. He's an absolute fucking idiot. If you're curious, they were unsuccessful. Lucky for him the border agent was like, "You are going to turn your car around right now. This never happened. Got it? Don't try this again, or you can go to prison." He also talked about how he thought people who collect unemployment or welfare are lazy and all these Republican talking points. Now this guy's father gave him a bunch of money to open his own business after he lost his job when he went to Canada. After she couldn't get in he flew to Sicily with her for months and never called his job. So I said that's pretty easy for someone whose father poured tens of thousands of dollars into a business just so you can work. You got some nerve. You have to realize not everyone has that luxury. Absolute point idiot. Me and my supervisor were talking about weird historical shit, and one of my coworkers started asking about some stuff. She said things like, "Is Rome where Egypt happened?" And while we tried to figure out what the hell she meant, we found she apparently associated Egypt with all of those guys racing around in circles, with the horses, and the big tower thing in the middle. I guess we said something about Rome, and she was really curious. She also several times, asked if Atlantis was real. Not, as I found, whether there might be an ancient underwater city somewhere which may have been known in ancient times. She wanted to know if Atlantis from the movie Aquaman was real, with people swimming around in it. She also claimed she had been pulled over by the police something like 96 times, which made it so that she had to pay $600 for car insurance every month on a normal ass car. She was very bad at her job, yet had the endless, unwarranted confidence of some combination of a 6-year-old and a complete psychopath. I was working at a supermarket during the whole Brexit fiasco, and in the weeks leading up to it, I very vividly remember having a conversation with someone I worked with that ended with them saying, "Yes, but there are so many immigrants in the country that it is sinking into the sea." I was so taken aback that it disrupted the flow of what I was saying/thinking. That was the exact moment I realized that Brexit was going to happen, honestly. I remember thinking that there was absolutely nothing I could respond I just looked at her for a bit, realizing that not everyone thinks the same way, and if she genuinely believed what she just told me, then no truth I could ever express to her would change her mind. I realized right then and there that, for whatever reason, what I thought was basic logical thinking was incredibly subjective depending on the person. It really opened my eyes actually. I wouldn't call her stupid, but her brain clearly works differently from the way mine does. And that is fine. If anything, that sole conversation taught me to try and understand why people think the way they do, rather than immediately tell them my opinion of their thoughts. This was also the same person who complained that her holiday in Turkey was not fun because the staff at the hotel refused to speak English. Honestly, I definitely had some interesting experiences at that horrible job. I'm in the Navy, and at one of the commands that I was stationed at we had duty sections that would take care of various command functions each day. Now a lot of places in the Navy will either have 6 or 8 duty sections, so that they are constantly rotating throughout the week. I had gotten temporarily assigned to somewhere else for a little under a year, and when I came back to my home command I couldn't remember if we were at 6 or 8 sections, and asked one of my coworkers. He told me we were at 7. I wondered if he misunderstood my question, and I told him that 7 is impossible, because if 2 sections were constantly stuck working Saturdays and Sunday and no one else had to, that would be incredibly unfair, and would probably lead to a mutiny. I also told him that if you had 7 sections it would be impossible for them to rotate throughout the days of the week. He kept insisting that we were at 7, even after I asked him what days he had duty that month, and they were different days of the week. I then had to pull out a calendar and manually count the days to him to prove how 7 sections wouldn't work. Still not convinced, I then called another of our coworkers and asked him, and he told us both that we were at 6 sections. He was a nice guy, but he was absolutely dumber than a rock. Oh, and he was also in charge of pay and other high-level admin functions. So a small part of my job is reviewing cases to find any potential problems that might occur. A secretary is responsible for getting all the paperwork together for me to review, but unfortunately she isn't very competent. These cases happen on Monday and Tuesday, so I review them the Wednesday and Thursday the prior week. I have been having a lot of issues with this secretary getting things ready and getting preliminary information completed, sometimes not getting it at all. One week I scheduled to take Friday off, so on the Thursday before the cases I go in to get Tuesday's cases. They aren't ready of course, and the secretary says to come back tomorrow, Friday, when I'm off. I inform her that I'm off Friday, so I won't be able to review those cases. She says with a sassy attitude, well then you should have came earlier in the week. I then point out that it was Thursday, the cases are not ready, and that it would be pointless for me to come ask for them any earlier. The look on her face was priceless when she realized how stupid she just made herself look. I also want to point out that I have told her and her boss and management that these cases should be completed 2 weeks in advance, not the week before, to allow for any corrections to be made. The secretary and her boss looked at me like I was a madman, but management agreed. There are about 6 other offices in these group that do it at least 2 weeks in advance. It is only this particular office that has problems. I was briefly and very casually dating a guy in college. We stopped seeing each other or really talking. I got a call from his number and picked up. It was someone I knew from the college coffee shop who told me they found a cell phone, and I was the first number on the speed dial. They asked if I knew whose phone it was, or could contact the owner and let them know where to retrieve their phone. This was prior to smartphones, and before people regularly accessed their text messages on other devices. I'd unfriended him on Facebook, and I went to college when Facebook was just becoming a thing. So I sent his housemate a text letting him know. Enter this exchange. Me, X's phone is at the coffee shop. For some reason they called me to let me know. Could you tell him so he can retrieve it? Housemate, sure thing, he's upstairs. Texting him now to tell him. Me, he won't get a text message. He lost his phone, and it is at the coffee shop. Housemate, okay, I'll call his cell then. Me, he's not going to pick up. The point is he does not have his phone on him. Housemate, I'll leave him a message then. Me, maybe you should go upstairs and tell him? I'm not sure he has a way To check his voicemail remotely, or will think to do that. Housemate, okay, I'll text him and tell him to check his voicemail. At this point I gave up and sent him an email telling him where his phone was / washed my hands of the whole thing. The next morning I got the following text from his housemate. I sent X several texts about his phone, but he never responded. He didn't say anything about it at breakfast. Not sure if he got my messages. I ran into my ex a week later on campus and he thanked me for the email and said, the funny part was, when I got my phone back I had like 10 text messages from my housemate essentially telling me my phone was at the coffee shop and to check my voicemail. We hung out in person for about 5 hours before I saw your email and he never said a word. Can't say I was surprised when that housemate flunked out of college soon after. Years ago I was over at my, now ex-boyfriend's house with his family for dinner. His mother who worked in healthcare, his father an engineer. At the time I was working as a lifeguard and teaching swimming lessons at a local pool. The ex was working as a cashier at a pet store. Important later. My ex was the type who knew everything and would bulldoze over conversations constantly. So we were all talking, and I don't know how the conversation got to this point, but he kept talking over me saying he knew more about CPR than me, which was a little insulting as it was my job to know, and he has never had his CPR certification. So I finally got fed up of his bulldozing and decided to ask him a question. Okay, so if it's possible for the human body to have a pulse, but not be breathing, is it possible to breathe without a pulse? This MF no joke sat there for a whole 4 seconds thinking, then proceeded to say yes and explain why that was possible. I honestly don't even remember what he said after that, but all I can remember is looking over at his mother and seeing her face drain of all hope, sheer disappointment slowly to turning to anger when she meets my eyes. I don't think she liked me after that, but I died laughing telling my parents later. I was the new kid in middle school in the more country suburban part of town, and this kid comes up to me and asks, "Are you Chinese or Japanese?" I told him that I was Korean, and after a long pause, he goes, "So which one are ya?" Another person who asked me a similar question, and they asked me how I could be both Asian and Korean. I said it was the same as being European and French, and they insisted I was wrong. A girl at school got pregnant and was ironically sitting in the sex ed course and had spaced out but paid enough attention to hear chlamydia. That was the name of the baby. My friend's roommate was in his mid-20s at the time and up until that point had only ever worked gigs and was paid in cash for modeling and other such ventures. Never had a bank account. Really good looking guy, but absolutely clueless. One day, he headed to the gym at 24-hour fitness, but they told him he couldn't work out until he renewed his membership. They said that they no longer accepted cash for the transaction and would only take card. This guy goes to 7-Eleven and buys an Amazon gift card for the amount he had to pay for the gym membership. He goes back to 24-hour fitness and they obviously say they can't accept that as payment. He argues with them, goes back to 7-Eleven and buys multiple gift cards for stores and gets refused, none of them being a regular Visa gift card. Eventually he throws in the towel and comes home with $800 plus in various retail gift cards that he lost the receipts for and can't be refunded, not understanding how any of these retail gift cards would be accepted to pay for his gym membership. Mil quit her job when they told her they plan on firing her and give her an additional 6 months of pay thanks to her nearly 27 years of experience with the company. She quit and said she didn't want it because, "I don't like money unless I earned it." But you worked there for nearly 30 years. You earned it. Few weeks later she tried to sell her house before she had bought another house. She couldn't get one because she didn't have a job, but thought if she sold her current house for just $45,000 she could use it as a down payment and not worry about monthly bills on a $250,000 home. She then tried to move in with her mom. Her mom lives in a retirement home. So instead she moved in with her brother after she was told she couldn't move into a retirement home. Months before this, she sold the pool and bought a new one because she didn't want to clean the water. She thought a new pool would come with fresh water. One time she asked me to help with a project and I noticed I need pliers to grab something. I asked her to grab some pliers and she came back with a hammer saying that, "Oh, I thought this was a pliers." Wouldn't believe me, or her daughter, that the guy on the internet she is talking to isn't really a US medic in Iraq that's also a multimillionaire and wants to marry her, but needs her bank account info. She lost a lot of money that week, but still doesn't believe he was a scammer. Instead that a terrorist intercepted her text message and email. She's still waiting for him to come pick her up, lol. Another time, she sold her car that was paid off just a few days prior because she thought it meant it no longer has insurance, so she had to get a new car. She didn't understand why her electric bill was so high. I had to explain to her she needs to turn off the lights and not leave them on 24/7. And I was told, but then I can't see at night when I'm sleeping. Yes, that's how sleeping usually works. She didn't know people outside of our state, Alabama, had electricity. She thought even the rest of the USA was without it, and that places like New York City was just in the movies. Whenever she voted she just picked people with the funny names because I'm a woman. My vote doesn't count yet. She didn't believe me when I tried to explain that the airspace that planes fly in is very large. That's why multiple planes can fly at the same time. They are not limited like a road. One time she sold the lawnmower because it ran out of gas, and when she went to the gas station she couldn't figure out which pump has lawnmower gas, not car gas. This was her first time doing it on her own without paying someone. Previously she paid a guy $800 every 2 weeks to come out and mow her grass, but only the roughly 40x80 feet small plot of grass she had. She paid another guy to come out and pressure wash using her pressure washer, $300 a week to come out and pressure wash the house every single Friday. If it was her daughter's birthday she always wanted her daughter to spend time with her because I gave birth to you, so your birthday is more important to me than to you. She also thought that age equals intelligence and that every single one of her birthdays she got smarter. It's why she didn't see a point in finishing high school when she was younger and why I, being only 27 with a degree in my experience in my field, doesn't mean I know what I'm talking about because, well, you're younger, I know much more than you. She doesn't eat corn because when she was 7 she lost a tooth eating a fake plastic corn on the cob and now corn scares her. I have so much about my mill, lol. When me and my wife were planning the wedding she specifically said, my mom is not invited. I don't think we really need a reason why. I was once on a flight with a pretty, blonde, chatty woman next to me. The airline attendants passed out snacks and she chose the cereal bar, which was apple flavored, clearly emblazoned on the front of the package. She spent I swear 10 minutes reading the ingredients on the back of the bar, even quickly googling a thing or two, all the while talking about how processed foods are dangerous, and she watches what she puts in her temple. Once she was seemingly satisfied she opened the wrapper and took a bite of the cereal bar. She chewed on it with this contemplative look on her face, then proceeded to spit it out, then started swishing water around her mouth, and then swallowed the water. When she finished swallowing the water, that clearly still has traces of the cereal bar in it, she tells me, "I'm allergic to apples. There should have been a label about the apples. See what I was telling you, eating processed foods is so dangerous." Then she pulls a bottle of Ocean Spray cran apple juice out of her purse, going on and on about how it's her favorite juice, and how good it is for the body, and how much weight she thinks she lost due to drinking it twice a day. Then continued drinking it, while talking about how it was a good thing she paid attention to the odd taste in the cereal bar or she'd be dead, because her EpiPen was in her checked bag. How every ingredient should be listed by food manufacturers on their products, even the individually wrapped ones, because food allergies are a huge health issue in America. How she wasn't sure what that taste had been cause she hadn't had an apple since childhood, etc, etc. I couldn't believe her level of stupid and could hardly tolerate it since she would not stop talking. So I put my headphones in and claimed I was taking a nap, closed my eyes, and listened to an audiobook for the rest of the flight to escape the assault of stupid she kept pouring out. I'm a bit late to the party, but I do have a story for this. In uni/college I was doing a semester abroad in Santa Cruz, Bolivia, and we just so happened to have a Bolivian history class. There is this guy DAVE**. That was that uncomfortable level of stupid where someone is too stupid to even understand when they're being mocked. I have no idea how he not only got into a good university, but also maintained a good enough GPA to do a semester abroad, so he was clearly a functional human adult for the most part. About a month into class, meaning we've been in Bolivia about a month and a half at this point, we get to the subject of SIMN Bolivia. As the professor is talking, a light bulb goes off in Dave's head. A brilliant, effervescent, 10,000 watt bulb bursting forth from his brain, desperate to be shared with the world. I see him with his hand raised, and I immediately start paying attention, because when Dave speaks it's best to just sit back and listen. His brilliant insight, that he needed to share with 12 or so other Spanish-speaking students who had been living in Bolivia for a month and a half, and googled Bolivia before moving there, was that maybe Bolivia was named after SIMN Bolivia. I don't know, Dave, what do you think? They sound pretty similar, don't they, Dave? I swear on my life that later in the semester, while in a van traveling at 14,000 feet, 4,200 meters, in La Paz, Bolivia, he claimed to feel lighter. Fucking Dave. Name changed to protect the stupid. TL. Doctor while on a semester abroad in Bolivia, a month into a Bolivian history class, a classmate announced in class that he's figured out Bolivia must have been named after SIMN Bolivia, as if he is the first to notice. Years ago I had to call a FedEx to arrange the shipment of a package. My office was paying for the shipment, so I had to give them our account number, the sending address and receiving address. It was going fine until sending address is 123 Main Street, Los Angeles, California 01234 FedEx person, thank you. And what is the receiving address? 1234 Main St. Washington, DC 12345 FedEx person, thank you. And what was the city? Washington. FedEx person. And the state? DC. FedEx person. There is no state of DC. So you're saying Washington is the state? No, DC is the state, as in District of Columbia. Technically DC is not a state, but for mailing purposes it is in the state category. So the city is Washington and District of Columbia is a state. FedEx person. Washington is a state. There is no state of DC. Here is where I need to mention that I grew up in the MD/DC/VA area, and the history of why DC is the nation's capital and a district, and not a state, has been pummeled into my head since grade school. Needless to say, I'm the expert in this conversation on why the District of Columbia is technically not a state, but for mailing purposes it is. Back to the conversation. The District of Columbia, as in the nation's capital. It's not a state, but we use DC as the state when mail is sent to our office. FedEx person, indignant at this point. There is no District of Columbia. The capital is in Maryland. So you mean District of Columbia is the city and Washington is the state? What's the zip code again? How do I reach these keysides the capital is in? Actually, I'm just gonna call back another time. If there was ever a call I wish I could have recorded, it would have been that one. I just want to hear it again for the lulz. I hope FedEx kept the recording of the call and the person I spoke to looked up Washington DC, and they've had a fruitful career and can now laugh at themselves for that one time where they argued with a customer about whether their location actually existed. I'm pretty late, but this was fun, and it got better recently. I started working in the shopping department at the company, where I still am, back in 1994. A guy I knew from high school worked in the same department, but I didn't know just how dumb he was until we started talking about our heritage. I shared that my great-grandfather on my dad's side came from Spain, to which he replied, with complete seriousness, "Well, that makes you a dirty Mexican." He was convinced that Spain was part of Mexico, and I have been called a Mexican by many of my colleagues for 26 years now. He said so many stupid things through the years that one time I told him that if brains were computers, his would be an abacus. Nobody got it. Fun follow-up. A couple years ago my dad did one of the DNA tests, and it came back with nothing from Spain. Turns out my great-grandfather was from somewhere else completely and was on the run from the law. He lied and told people, including his family, that he was from Spain, but he had likely never been there. High school film session the morning after a game. Coach sees a monster of a defensive tackle who's built like a fire plug only less yielding. Demolish the guard trying to block him then trying to arm tackle the RB. Because he had the mobility of the aforementioned fire plug so he yells, "God damn it. Move your feet and stop trying to arm tackle. How much do your arms weigh?" Now clearly he's trying to tell the kid that yes the RB could run through his arm tackle, but wasn't anyone running through the 270 plus pounds of Moran Strong sitting in front of him. Kid thinks about it for a second, opens his mouth, and says earnest as can be, "Coach, you can weigh your arms?" Room instantly erupts in laughter with the kid turning bright red and looking around confused. Coach went through about 6 different colors until he finally calmed down and realized that this kid was not trying to have a go at him, but was legitimately that stupid. I'm still not sure that guy caught up to the point of that comment, and it was over 20 years ago. Nice guy, not the brightest, but a nice guy. Funny addendum. Dude was ejected from that game for arm tackling the running back by picking him literally off the ground and slamming him down like the Hulk destroying Loki. The refs could not believe that he didn't intend to give that guy brain damage. You can't ask a question like this and not include this gem. It's not uncommon as a teacher to have students who are a bit behind the curve in certain aspects, but 99.99999% of the time they are keen on something. They might not understand how to identify a noun or what theme is, but they somehow know how to make a mean plate of nachos. You learn pretty quick to not judge fish for their tree climbing ability, yeah no? I thought this was the rule when I was teaching until I met Kevin. Kevin isn't his real name, but it doesn't matter because he can't spell it anyway. Kevin was a student of mine during my last year of teaching. He came to my classroom with very little to show for his academic past. He had moved a few times and thus was missing a lot of typical test scores that we used to try and ballpark their ability. Don't worry, it was a ballpark. We didn't make major decisions until we actually had a chance to talk and work with a student for a bit. I thought that's fine. I'll just do some one-on-one with Kevin and see what's up. One-on-one with Kevin was like conversing with someone who'd forgotten everything in a freak, if not impossible, amnesia incident. There was no evidence that he had learned anything past the 2nd grade, and now he was in 9th grade. Flabbergasted, I figured we needed to get more serious with this. If he was going to be in my class, I needed to know why and how. I decided to meet with him, his guidance counselor, his parents, and another teacher to see what was really going on. This is where it all became clear. It was by some incredible fluke that his family hadn't been wiped off the face of the earth years ago. Odds are his entire heritage was based on blind luck and some type of sick divine intervention that saves his family every time a threat presents itself. Kevin was the genetic pinnacle of this null achievement. Even my instructional lead, a woman who could find a redeeming tray in a Balrog, failed to see any reason this kid or his family should be alive today. So here's a list of events that made it abundantly clear that God exists, and he's laughing uncontrollably. Kevin frequently forgot when/where class was. On more than one occasion, I had to retrieve him from other classrooms. Kevin ate an entire 24-pack of crayons, puked, and then did it again the next day. This is 9th grade. I have no idea where he got crayons. Kevin's dad wrote tuition checks and mailed them to me, his English teacher. This was a public school. When I gave it back to Kevin, voided, to give to his dad with a brief note explaining that this is a public school, Kevin got in trouble for trying to spend it at 711 after school. Kevin was removed from the culinary arts program after leaving a cutting board on the gas stove and starting a fire. Twice Kevin threw his lunch at the school resource officer and tried to run away. He ran into a door and insisted it wasn't him. Kevin stole my phone during class. I called it. It rang. He denied that it was ringing. Not that it wasn't his. Not that he did it. No, he denied that the phone was actually ringing. He tried it 3 times before the end of the year. Kevin called the basketball coach a motherfucking bitch during gym. Basketball tryouts were that afternoon. Kevin tried out. It didn't go well. Kevin's mom could never remember which school he went to. She missed several meetings because she drove to other schools, none of which he ever went to. Kevin tased himself in the neck before a football game. Kevin kept a bottle of orange Kool-Aid in his backpack for about 4 months. He thought it would turn into alcohol. He drank it during homeroom and threw up. Kevin said the N-word a lot. Kevin was white. The high school was 84% black. Kevin got beat up a lot. Kevin stole another student's iPhone and tried to sell it back to them. Kevin didn't understand that his grade was dependent on tests, quizzes, homework, class walk, and participation. Kevin finished his first semester with a 3% average. He tried to bribe me with $11. Kevin spit on a girl and said you should get out of those wet clothes. The girl was the Spanish student teacher. Kevin didn't know dogs and cats were different animals. Kevin tried to download porn onto a computer in the library at the circulation desk while he was logged on. Kevin asked a girl to prom. He was in 9th grade and freshmen don't go to prom by asking for her phone number and then texting her his address. Kevin got gum in his hair constantly. Kevin regularly tried to cheat on assignments by knocking the pile over, grabbing one before I had picked them all up, and then writing its name on it wherever there was room. Kevin had several allergies, but neither his parents nor he could remember what they were. They were very concerned that the holiday party at high school, we don't have those, would have peanuts. When they finally got a doctor's note, he was allergic to amoxicillin. Kevin and his parents took a trip to Nassau. How the fuck did they even get airline tickets and forgot all their luggage at home? I didn't believe him when he told me until I talked to him mom, who told me first thing when I saw her at the bi-weekly meeting. Kevin's grandfather apparently died in a chainsaw accident. I can only assume God was looking the other way that day. Know a guy who thought switchblades are illegal everywhere in the United States. Spoiler alert, they aren't. So, the day I got one I decided to show it to him. I was also certain he had never held one, from the previously mentioned belief, but also, he thought that switchblades, the out the front kind, which is what I got, did not lock open and only needed a little pressure to shoot the blade back into the handle. So, I hand him the knife, closed. He activates the switch and the blade pops out. He said, that's cool. And without any further testing or questioning proceeds to put the knife against his leg to test his hypothesis of the blade not locking. I figure out that is what he is about to do. I say, dude, that knife will fucking stab you. Not 1 second later it was in and out of his leg. He didn't think it was so bad until the blood started flowing down his leg. We went to his room to bandage it. Think college dorm type area. After 5 minutes of trying to staunch the flow, we suggest we take him to the ER. We are glad we did. He lost what looked like 1.5 cups of blood in 5 minutes spurting all over his floor. He learned an important lesson that day. Dull knives are dangerous knives. I don't keep any dangerous knives. The only way my knives are dangerous is through sheer stupidity. Edit. Icing on the cake with that stab. I asked him a couple of days later what was going through his head and why did he not test his hypothesis on the wooden fence only 3 feet away from where he was standing. I didn't want to damage the tip of your knife. I thought, flesh is soft. Wow. I work at a hospital as security and we still get into contact incidents with people wanting to enter the hospital but refusing to wear a mask. Now, some of them have breathing difficulty, so I understand that. They still need a mask, but I can help with that. The other 80% are split between it's my American right to choose not to wear a mask. Fun fact, a hospital is private property. Even before the law, the only right they had was to either abide or leave, or you're so stupid. You can still be exposed even with a mask on. Don't talk down to me about how stupid it may or may not be when I'm not the one that makes the rules. Even if I agreed 100%, I'm not losing my job because of redundancy in prevention. That's one thing I'm fine with there being redundancy in. These people must have thought that masks are supposed to eliminate any and all diseases the second that they touch the cloth. Now that they know, they jumped off the opposite cliff into almost acting as if they increase your exposure. Masks are to protect others, not you, nearly as much. I knew it. These masks do nothing but oppress my American rights. Not quite, because your benefit increases with the more that other people wear masks, and vice versa. Remember the United part of United States of America? It's like that. I have to deal with so many that act these ways every single day, and I will never understand it. It's like they think the term medical is either a blessing able to instantly protect them, or a dark curse only there to rule over them. It's honestly had me question how ignorant the public is, or if these types are just attracted to hospitals. A girl I used to work with once exclaimed how amazing it is that zebras exists. Having to get a horse and a tiger to breed was a stroke of genius. I stopped what I was doing to ask her to repeat herself, and she believes that's how they are here. So I explained that no, that's not what zebras are for several reasons. For starters, they just can't breed, their DNA is not close enough for breeding, and even if it were, the tiger would most likely just eat the horse. At which point she asked me where all the new animals come from then, if it's not breeding matches like this. So of course I asked her what new animals she is referring to, as to my knowledge there are no new animals. Sure, we find animals we hadn't seen before, but they aren't new. She told me that she knows new animals exist, and she can't believe I haven't seen the documentary about making them. Of course I ask what this documentary is called. Jurassic Park. This girl had seen Jurassic Park and genuinely thought it was based on real events. After I stopped laughing, I told her that surely she can't think that if at any point we had manufactured dinosaurs and they had gotten loose, it would have been huge news. Well, she had a counter there too. Trailers. She had seen the trailers when she was younger. That was the news. I've told this story before, but I've yet to have anything beat it. When I was active duty military, I worked on airplanes. Lot of smart people who just liked to get drunk on their time off and fuck around. But there was always an idiot or two out there that had to be attached to someone's hips. I was walking into the shop to finally eat lunch and pull my forms for the night when my expediter rolled up to tell me the village idiot, Airman Snuffy, needed to change the main landing gear tire, and he had no one else to put on it but me. I roll, whatever. I jump in the expediter truck so he could take me back to the shop, so I could at least get a Snickers and do a quick forms pull. On the way there we pass Airman Snuffy, who is pushing the tire change kit to hit aircraft. I tell him to get the tire and I'll meet him at his spot in a few minutes. He smiles and nods. Fast forward 15 to 20 minutes and the expediter is taking me to Airman Snuffy's spot. As we are on the way, I see Airman Snuffy carrying the tire on his shoulder like kids used to do to boomboxes in the 80s. Ladies and gents, this a fully inflated aircraft tire with a diameter of about 2.5 feet. It weighs roughly 30 pounds. And he is carrying it. The expediter pulls up to Snuffy, and I roll the window down. Snuffy, you realize that tire is inflated, right? He says yeah. It's a tire, bro. It purposes to roll. He again agrees but makes no effort to put the tire on the ground and roll it the rest of the quarter mile. I tell him I'll see him at his spot, and he keeps on walking. Never in my life have I had something top that. I've had a few come close, but that's still the breadwinner. I used to waitress years ago, and it was definitely an enlightening experience. The strangest question I got that still baffles me was, so there's country fried chicken and country fried steak? Me, yup. So what's the difference? Me, thinking she must be talking about how they're prepped. They're prepared totally the same. Tenderized, fried, and covered in gravy if you want, and both get two sides. So the only real difference is the type of meat you're in the mood for. So, how are they different? Me, one is chicken, one is beef, that's it. Otherwise they're cooked the same way. Looking at me like I'm the moron here. So they're the same thing. What's the difference between the chicken and the steak? Me, wondering if maybe I'm the crazy one who's misunderstood something. The only difference is that one is chicken and one is beef. So they're the same? We kept dancing in this circle a few times, and I'm pretty sure we were both still immensely confused by the time I left the table. As a waiter, I often end up working the patio during the nicer months. I've been asked several times if I could make it warmer or cooler, and if I could somehow make it less bright in the middle of the day. I have had vegans ask for bacon. I had folks try to order alcohol because they turned 21 next week, as if that would somehow change the legality. I had a table dine and dash, but they left their phone. They came back for it a half hour later. I had someone hand their glass of white Zinfandel, which is a blush, back to me, and in a very sassy voice say, I ordered the white Zinfandel. I got them Chardonnay, and were perfectly happy with it. The other day I had someone call in an order for curbside. I asked them to wait in the designated spots, and told him it would be about 20 minutes. 5 minutes in they decided to go around to the side door past signs saying that a mask is required to enter, while not wearing a mask, and walk into the kitchen to get their food. He couldn't understand why we were upset. Forgive this nightmare of an essay. My dad has borderline personality disorder, and I don't believe he's actually stupid, but let's just say he believes what he wants to believe, and there's no convincing him otherwise. We had a religious discussion recently. He's a hardcore Lutheran and he's pissed that I'm dating a Baptist girl that I met at my Baptist university. I never yell and it never gets intense, and this conversation took place over a phone call, but every now and then he says some passive aggressive shit, and this time I wasn't having it. Here are some of the highlights. I asked him first of all what the fundamental differences were between his beliefs and the beliefs of other followers of Christ. He gave me a poorly articulated essay on why he thinks Lutherans are better, but I tuned my ear to any specific differences he actually cited among the inarticulate bullshit, and there were only two: the belief that communion bread and wine are the literal body and blood of Christ, and then the belief that we are saved by grace alone. I said that first of all no denomination has said we are saved by anything but grace, even if they do emphasize showing love by good works. Then I said that maybe just maybe Jesus, the man who spoke in frequent parables, just might have used a metaphor every now and then, and maybe a slight difference in interpretation shouldn't be good reason for a gaping divide in his holy church. His response was golden. Well, maybe he was using metaphors, but it's a slippery slope interpreting the Bible that way. Next you'll say, being gay is okay. Hold on. So you're telling me I'm falling down a slippery slope, which, as my girlfriend pointed out, is actually a logical fallacy, and meanwhile as I'm studying for my 10-page exegetical paper for my Bible interpretation class, was literally working on it as he called, I'm reading in the New Testament, where Paul says a couple million times that the church has to be one church, unified, and he rebukes churches for division. And who knows, maybe Paul's letters aren't as holy as the Gospels, but you certainly won't hear that from a Lutheran like my dad who believes that every single word of the Bible is the word of God. Anyway, so at this point he's admitted he can't point to a place in the Bible where I'm actually going wrong, but I'm looking directly at what he's doing wrong. He's calling up from the bottom of the slippery slope to tell me that I'm falling down it. He said something else kind of golden too. In our discussion I cited several findings from my Bible interpretation class which goes very in depth, studying multiple translations and word studies of the original languages of manuscripts of the Bible, and this discussion led to another wonderful statement by my dad. But the Lutherans have already been interpreting the Bible for centuries. Luckily I was quicker on my feet with this one, and these are the exact words I said. So you're telling me I don't have to understand God's word because someone else understood it for me? Windows.exe has stopped working. He said something about how I should be going to a Lutheran university. Do those actually exist? Instead, I gently reminded him that before I started attending my current university, he was the one encouraging me to go to the University of Arkansas, which, in fact, is not a Lutheran university. It's a party school. And he was very set on me going there because it was cheaper. Luckily my mom advocated for me going to the place I wanted to go. At this point he started rambling some more incoherent nonsense about how disappointed he was that I wasn't going to get married in a Lutheran church. Do you think pastor cares? Do you think God cares? I asked. Well, pastor doesn't care because he's a pastor. Oh my God. So neither God himself nor a cult, an ordained servant of God serving at your favorite Lutheran church care, asterisk but you do. Was a fun conversation. I turned 18 my senior year of high school and got my first tattoo. Naturally people in class started asking if it was real / if they could touch it. One girl comes over, looks at my tattoo and then scoffs. "That's not real. Black ink tattoos don't exist." She said it with so much arrogance and confidence I remember staring at her for 2 seconds in complete silence trying to figure out if she was joking or not. She wasn't. I laughed at her, along with a few other classmates, while her friends tried to explain to her that she was wrong. She got so angry at me for lying to the class, and then laughing at her, that she walked out. I still wonder if she ever found out that black ink tattoos do in fact exist. Edit. I have plenty of my own stupid moments though, don't get me wrong. When I was a teen working at McDonald's I was shocked to see mayo as an ingredient in our tartar sauce. I announced that that was a secret ingredient that made our tartar sauce so good. No one told me that's literally the base of all tartar sauce, probably because I was so happy and loud, and they didn't want me to feel embarrassed. Not my story technical my story but a partner's. I work in EMS. After every call we chart times and actions, etc. What we saw, what we did, when it happened. Then when we finalize those charts it goes to quality assurance. This just means someone, usually a supervisor, looks over it to make sure you don't have any embarrassing typos, and that you didn't forget to document pertinent information. Sometimes it gets real busy, so when you're several charts deep it happens. If they have a question or concern, they'll flag your chart and you can respond. If they need you to change something, they'll flag it to tell you what the issue is, and then they'll demote the chart to let you change something before allowing you to relock it. Keep those two things in mind. So my partner gets a flag that tells him he needs to change something. The chart wasn't demoted though. So he contacts the supervisor on the shift and says, "Hey, I need you to demote this chart so I can change it." A normal weekly interaction. Supervisor, let's call her M, demotes the chart and we assume forgets she did it. An hour later she calls and says this chart has already been demoted. I need you to relock it so I can demote for you. I worked at an after school club for primary school children. I was like 3 days into the job, and I was talking with the self-proclaimed deputy manager. She wasn't a DM. I found out later she had the exact same job description and title as me and my colleagues. Anyway, let's call my colleague Louise. A 4-year-old girl asks Louise if she can go inside to use the bathroom. She says yes, and the girl goes, and then Louise turns and says to me she's Indian. Me, I think she's Bangladeshi. She told me she's from Bangladesh. Louise, oh, so she's Pakistani then. Me, no, that's people from Pakistan. That was such sheer ignorance. But Louise has also made straight up racist and derogatory comments about kids and their parents who have different ethnicities/nationalities. She even said to my newly pregnant colleague's face, "I love black men. You know your baby is going to have a huge D***K because my colleague and her partner are black," and said she was having a baby boy. I don't work there anymore. First post on mobile. Nursing in the 90s. I'm returning from my dinner break Sunday night when a patient called me over. He wasn't one of my assigned patients, ent ward, but I recalled he was being discharged the next day. Cast, me, DP, dumb patient and ED, dear doctor, DP, nurse, my tongue is swelling up. Me, taking out my trusty pen light and having a look. Yes, it does appear swollen. Reaching for his chart at the end of the bed. "Are you allergic to anything you know about?" Chart said nil, known under allergies. DP, when I was a kid, I was allergic to cucumbers. Me, what symptoms occurred when you ate cucumbers? My stomach was turning my dinner into lead. DP, my tongue would swell up, and I'd need a shot of adrenaline before it blocked my breathing. Me, I knew. I just knew. But I had to ask, dot the T's, cross the I's of course. So, what did you have for dinner? DP, I had the salad plate. Me, was there any cucumber? DP, oh, yes. Me, did you eat it? An internal scream beginning in my brain. DP, oh, yes, almost looking bloody proud. Me, wearily resigned. Why? DP, well, I wondered if I was still allergic and figured this would be the best place to find out. I wanted to rip his throat out and say, breathe through that, and that vision helped me look at him and say, I'll just page the doctor. The thing is that on a Sunday evening there aren't that many docs around, and the ones that are busy. But I paged, and in a couple of minutes, got a response from DD, lovely woman, so I related the story to her. She was momentarily stunned and said, BB, but why? Me, apart from the answer he gave me, who the F asterisk CK knows? DD, sighing heavily, I'm on my way. Me, hell, DD, take your bloody sweet time. She turned up, shot was given, and patient was fine, physically. Mentally, I made sure that I escorted him off the ward the next day. Now whenever I or someone I know does anything that has never worked well when tried before, and it doesn't again, I call it doing a cucumber. Permission granted to use, as thanks for all the stories I've enjoyed. Summary at the end. So earlier this year we were reading through the script for what was gonna be this year's spring musical at my school, Into the Woods Jr. People involved: T, played the witch A, played Jack J, played Baker's wife O, played the baker, spoiler warning. So we were reading through the scene where Jack and the baker are trading the cow for the beans. O was reading her lines to J and O, everyone else was sitting out of the way. So there's this song that Jack sings during this scene, where Jack is saying goodbye to the cow. So the song plays, A starts to sing along to it, because she didn't quite know the timing yet. The guide track was still being used, not performance track. Anyways, it's the end of the song and J and O are getting ready to take the cow and A was getting ready to go off stage. So A is finishing the song. The song ends and I'll see you soon again. I hope that when I do, it won't be on a plate. So the track is paused, because it goes into another song pretty much right away. T, I don't get that last line. You know, the it won't be on a plate. Someone else, what do you mean? They are talking about the cow getting eaten. T, wait, people eat cow. She was dead serious. This girl thought that hamburger, steak, etc. was all horse meat. Summarized, girl in my class thought that we ate horses and that stuff like hamburger was horse meat. She didn't know we ate cows, not horses. Yay, I get to participate. This was many years ago. I worked at a shoe store in the mall, and it was raining pretty steady that day. I got off of my shift at the end of the day, and got to my car, and realized I had left my headlights on the whole time I was working. This was before automatic headlights, and thus I needed a jump start. Thankfully I carry cables in my car at all times. I didn't see anyone in the parking lot that I could petition for a jump start, so I trudged back into the mall to ask one of my cowhawkers if they would be willing to give me a jump. It just so happened that the one cowhawker whose shift ended at the same time as mine was still in the store getting ready to leave. DCW equals did see coworker ME equals me hey DCW, since you're leaving, would you mind giving me a jump start? I left my lights on all day and my battery is dead. I have cables. DCW, sure, where are you parked? Me, this level, about 4 rows back. DCW, well, I'm parked about 8 rows back, and I don't have an umbrella. But if you can give me a ride to my car, so I don't have to walk as far in the rain, then I'll be happy to give you a jump start. My eyes rolled, and I handed her my umbrella as I said, think about what you just said. I'm going to hell for this. My mother-in-law joined my family for dinner. We went to a Hawaiian restaurant down the street. On the menu was spicy pork. The waiter comes over, takes our order, gets to my meal, and she asks the spicy pork, is it spicy? I'm thinking this is an inside joke between islanders, but she's dead fucking serious. A dialogue went on between the very patient waiter / restaurant owner and my meal on how the pork was, in fact, spicy, and that she could order the luau BBQ pork instead as it wasn't at all spicy. So the spicy pork, it isn't spicy then? I'll order it. Everyone at the table, are you sure? Spicy pork shows up. She takes one bite. Oh, this is too spicy. It's no good. She looks me dead in the eye, eyeballs my bulgogi ribs, and says here, trade. Have not been back out to eat with her since last year. I had a new hire come in for a trial shift at my cafe. Her resume had 5 years of experience at a large sports club/restaurant as a waiter, but she wanted to upskill and start making food. Awesome. I love people who want to learn. I started teaching her how to make scrambled eggs. She dropped the whole egg in the dish. I think no big deal, it's just nerves. She drops the dish. Egg goes everywhere. Dish didn't break. Still no big deal. She turns to look at me. What do I do now? A low warning bell goes off in my head at this point, but I explain it's okay, we'll just clean it up with these paper towels. She's obviously freaking out with nerves, so I explain that everything is okay and takes minutes to gather herself. I say that I'm going to take the bin out and she can just wait here for a few minutes. As I walk out I hand her a bin liner and all, if she could put it in the bin. KTHX. I walk back in 60 seconds later, and she has literally put the liner in the bin, as if it's rubbish. She did not get hired. I have a few. All the same person. Thought the world was really black and white before color photography or video happened. To explain, assumed technology was always capable of capturing color, just that there was none, before like the 1950s. Tried to wash dishes by pouring Dawn directly on the dirty dishes and wiping it off with paper towels. Got a new paper plate for every microwave burger he had. He would finish eating one, throw the plate away and immediately grab a new plate to put the next sandwich on. When he didn't want to eat unhealthy things would just chew on them and spit them out. Ate a beehive off the ground. Packed a thermos of water but didn't put the actual lid on, just the cup cap. Needless to say water was everywhere. Once was home alone at my house. The doorbell rang. He hides in the closet because he thinks someone is in the house. Left things at my house he wants back, but every time he is here he never takes anything back home with him. Didn't know how to take a bath. Turned on the bath water, observed it going down the drain and gave up. Left a very sharp steak knife on my fluffy bed without telling anyone. Tried to use it to open a package and just left it there. It was mixed in with the covers. If I remember any more I'll make another post lol. I lived in North Dakota for a year-long grad school internship. One time, I had time-sensitive documents sent to me via FedEx, but since I happened to be going out of town that weekend, I had them shipped to the local FedEx office store, so I could just pick them up when I got back. I track the package, and when I get back to town, I head to FedEx office. I go to the counter and present the tracking info. I can literally see the envelope addressed to me in a lockbox near the register. That's my envelope. I'm Gushin Geo. Here's my ID. The guy looks at it and says, "This says your address is in Oregon." Me, yeah, I'm from there, but I'm here in ND for a grad internship at the university. Him, well I can't give this to you without a North Dakota address. Me, well I have an apartment here, but the envelope is addressed to this FedEx office store. I specifically did that, so I wouldn't miss the delivery to my apartment. Him, well I'm going to need to see some ID with your North Dakota address. Me, first, I'm here temporarily, so I don't have any ID with that address. Best I could do is a utility bill or a piece of mail. But regardless, this envelope, I point to it 3 feet from me, is addressed to here. So really you just need verify that I'm Gushin Geo. He still refuses to give me the envelope. Finally, I ask him if he has a manager who works there. He says sure. He gets the manager. I tell him I had an envelope sent to the FedEx office store for pickup. I point to the envelope and I show him my ID. He looks at it for 3 seconds, unlocks the lockbox, gives me the envelope and I leave. I'm not sure I have ever been more frustrated with another human being in my entire life. Former help desk agent here. You guys know all the stereotypes of people calling a technical support. And I can confirm, it's all true. I heard plenty of stupid things during my time as its support, but there's been one woman that killed me for at least 3 days. The company I worked for was an external partner for several companies that offered internet and TV, private and business. One day a woman, let's call her Karen, called the support hotline because your F***ing company isn't able to get my internet to work. My routine was to create a troubleshooting to get a better overview over the situation. No results. Me. Why do you think your internet isn't working, Karen? I tried to send a fax and it didn't go through. Me. And how did you know it didn't work? Was there an error on your device? Karen. No, there was no error. I know it didn't work because the paper I wanted to transfer always came back out of the device. Me. So you are telling me you think your internet is broken because you tried to send a letter via fax and it came back out of your device and wasn't delivered through the cables? Karen. Yeah, that's how it's supposed to be. So now fix my internet or I'll cancel my contract. Me. Okay, please hold the line for one moment. It was that moment I realized I got the most stupid person ever on the line and couldn't hold it but laugh. TL. Doctor, Karen thought a fax is supposed to send the letter through the cable. Blames provider for not fixing her internet because letter always comes back out of device. Sorry for some mistakes. I'm not native speaker. Close bracket. Somewhere there must be a village missing an idiot because somehow this girl exists. In middle school, I was trying to help a girl in my Spanish class revise for a maths test we were going to have that same afternoon. I was genuinely happy about helping someone study, so we started revising. In the end it turned out to be more of a tutor session in which I was tutor rather than a study buddy meetup. I realized that she didn't know the difference between area and perimeter when I told her to calculate the perimeter of a shape and she calculated the area. I'm surprised she actually knew how to calculate the area at all, but to be fair it was a rectangle, since I understood that I had to give her easier questions. I was being very patient with her, so I calmly corrected her. In my example of a circle, I knew I had to make the dimensions low, since her IQ was clearly suffering, so I made the diameter of this circle 2. This just means that you need to divide 2 by 2 in order to get the radius. So as I was explaining how to calculate the area, she interrupts me and says wait, but 2 divided by 2 is 0. I stopped writing and gave her that WTF head turn. I was waiting for her to say that she was joking, but I quickly realized she wasn't. I was speechless for several seconds because I had to process what had just happened and acknowledge it as reality. I was then able to squeeze out not exactly, it's actually 1. I could feel my brain cells taking their last breath and dying. Needless to say, the math test didn't go well for her. This girl I used to be friends with would bring other people to my apartment, uninvited, every time she came over, and she wasn't always invited either. One time she came with a random person, again, uninvited, and they started talking about inviting someone else over. I said I didn't want too many people coming over, and if they wanted to all hang out, they could do so at her apartment, which was right across the street from mine, and she gave me this annoyed look and said fine. Half an hour later, she gets a call. It's the other person she invited over saying he was outside. She tells me she's gonna bring him in, and I said, didn't I tell you that I didn't want randoms coming over to my house? Why don't you just go to your house then? And she started saying not to worry because he's cool. She saw that I was getting mad because of this, and she told me I needed to chill. I told her that if she lets him in, it's gonna be very awkward for everyone. She sat down, thought for a couple seconds, then got back up and said I'm just gonna let him in. I'll be 5 seconds. I was so close to just locking her out, and I really wish I did. Her first friend she invited felt really bad because he realized that's how he was invited to, but he was actually nice, so I wasn't upset at him, and we got along well. Although it was very awkward for her and her other friend she decided to invite. Today, when someone told me that the Democratic Party, America, never denounced the KKK, a well-known homegrown terrorist group that reached its peak of power over a century ago with a less powerful resurgence about 60 years ago. For those outside the US, when the KKK was founded it was primarily populated by Democrats. It was also exclusively populated by Protestants, but we can't mention that part, and was dedicated to this nasty little thing called white supremacy. Well, the thing is, the Democratic Party flipped so hard that about a century after the KKK was founded it drafted and passed groundbreaking legislation that dismantled all laws that explicitly allowed racism. There are still racist systems and laws in the US, but none explicitly mention race in the way that Jim Crow laws did. A year after that, the Democratic Party passed another groundbreaking law pertaining to voting rights. It astonishes how historically illiterate most Americans are. Also, just gotta mention any time that any American says that something is communist, it's in reality probably something ranging from as commonsensical as nationalized healthcare to something as phenomenally not communist as fascism. Americans are profoundly stupid, and I think about leaving this country more often than I'm proud to admit. Just now, about 30 minutes ago, I learned that people in my workplace, it's R&D paper mill in Maine, are taking extras of the face masks that are provided by the company. They aren't wearing them or using them, or even taking them for their families. They are taking them and throwing them out on the grounds that if they get rid of them faster, then they won't have to wear them for as long. That's right, while first responders and healthcare workers are dying, sometimes because they can't get the appropriate supplies, these assholes are just taking face masks and throwing them out. It even got to the point where a few employees rushed the temperature taking room, stole as many whole boxes of masks that they could carry, 50 masks per box, and made a point of dumping them in the trash in front of the person taking temperatures that day, because obviously we would never be able to, I don't know, order more. I'm really disgusted by this. Aside from the blatant waste of resources, the bullheaded close-minded idiocy is just unnecessary. These are the same people who complain when the person taking temperatures takes off their face mask when there's no one seeking access to the mill. Literally heard one of these people say that it wasn't right that the temperature taking person wasn't keeping the mill people safe. I just really want to stress that these actions don't represent all of the employees at the mill. Quite a lot of them are willingly/gladly in compliance with the face mask policy. It's just a select group of really special idiots being disrespectful and childish. I became friends with a girl, M, last year. I was her only friend because no one else was, and my other friends, C and B, didn't like that. I included everyone until C started talking bad about me to other people. I stayed friends with C, but was very careful around her. Then one day I had a sports class, and I had to pick a team. I picked B, then some other people, and eventually picked C. C didn't like that I didn't pick her first, and she stormed off crying. She didn't talk to me for a week and really shit talked about me to everyone. C then got the coordinator involved, and we had to have a meeting on why I should have picked C first. As the year goes on, C and B start bullying M along with the other girls in my class. C ruins millisecond stuff, so M goes to the coordinator. Then M's older friends went to C and B and threatened to beat them up. I get put in the middle and have to go to the coordinator to give the truth about the situation. I'm still friends with M and B, but I'm trying to pull away from C. I was then talking to M one day and C tells everyone, and I got bullied for that. I wanted to play basketball with M instead of netball with the girls in my class, so all the girls in my class surrounded us and threatened us. This year C has blackmailed me and stopped talking to me for 2 weeks because I laughed at one of her comments. We both laughed at it, but I'm always in the wrong. Then I get told by C that all the girls in my class had a group chat and C didn't invite me, and all of my male friends hate me and talk shit about me. The comment about my friends was a lie. She was just trying to get me angry. I sat alone in class because there were no seats next to people, so I asked my teacher to move the desks around. She told me to just sit next to someone. I sat alone the whole semester. I have a coworker who is a walking description of stupid. She keeps an overlarge simple calculator with giant button because using the on-screen one is confusing. She calculated a customer usage for a reusable product to be 150 days. One of our supervisors kept rejecting the order back to her for inaccuracies. I watched as the supervisor tried to walk her through the problem, then gave up in frustration and tapped another supervisor to come in. I was trying to hold in my laughter at this point. Supervisor #2. Okay, so if they are going to use 2 a week, stop looking at the screen. Look at me. If they're using 2 a week, how many do they need per month? Coworker, the product is size 0.5, so that's tapping on calculator. Supervisor #2. No, that doesn't matter. Stop thinking about the size. Clear out the calculator. Just listen to me. If they're using 2 per week, how many are they using per month? Coworker 30. Supervisor #1. Under her breath, Jesus Christ. I couldn't help letting out a little snort. Supervisor #2. 2 times 4. What's 2x 4? Coworker. Tapping calculator 8. Oh 8. Supervisor #2 walks away shaking her head sad that nothing was learned. Coworker glances over at me and notices my hand covering my mouth as I barely keep it together. Says to me, 8. It was 8. I was confused because they were 0.5. Yay, so I was that. It was that. I just raise an eyebrow at her and turn back to my station. Things like this are a daily occurrence, and when she leaves her shift, an hour after I come in, the supervisors have so much to tell me. Every single day. I've become sort of a therapist to them due to all the stupidity they have to deal with. In secondary school, high school for Americans etc., we had math class 3 times a week. I never did the homework and usually bluffed my way through answering questions, not always effectively, but enough to keep doing it. So we were the first year to get to use calculators for the exam year we were in, and everyone had their KCO or whatever models, as did I. I had a gentleman we'll refer to as Ag sitting beside me, would have joined us a little into the school year, so he was like the newest kid. Nice guy and usually very clever in things, and I think he's a lawyer now. Anyway, a maths teacher is working through the homework answers, randomly picking people, and she falls on SG for the answer to question 12 or something. This was Monday math class, which was the first class of the day, and I was defiantly not awake fully yet. Ag in his usual proud and confident voice says, the answer is mathematical error. That woke me up. The rest of the class and the teacher stared for a minute and there was a few laughs. The teacher walks down to him and looks at the copybook, as did I, and he has in big bold writing exactly like it said on his calculator screen when she asked him to show her what he did to get that mathematical error. She then, when done with him, looks at my obviously empty copybook and I get a detention the following lunch day. Thanks Ag. Do your homework, kids. United States government. Biggest cover-up / inbreeds. Florida is confirmed to be thoroughly compromised by extremist inbreeded terrorists created at a hidden ghost laboratory. Beware of being lured to their organizations by any means necessary. By attack used on own citizens. Aggressive kidnappings of official government. America is currently dwindling their own military through inhumane tortures that lead straight into death or completely replaced with inbreeds. Warfare declared by inbreeds made by our government in secret. America was caught by witnesses within the states working overtime to restructure their down at human / sex trafficking recruitment operations for inbreeding and torture. USA are providing more for inbreed terrorists more so than law-abiding citizens. Ransom locking sex with people who did not inbreed at all. South Florida Coral Springs has been turned into robots. Unsure if they are dead or alive. Citizens incapacitated by our own government. Cover-up names for rogue organizations, psyops, gang stalkers, police, secret mafia, Illuminati. Extremist and satanic country inbreeding white terrorists within America to kill off their own citizens, kidnap or inbreeding. Extremist inbreeding used as a new way to degenerate citizens of the United States bloodline and the complete thorough destruction of the human body. Advocating people with biological parents to be kidnapped, tortured, forced into physical, mental, and sex slavery within a hidden and highly secured facility or residence, fully compromised, and eventually killed. Coral Springs, South Florida has been turned into a full terrorist inbreeding / breeding grounds for human / drug / sex trafficking and heavy prostitution. Almost every person has been made easy to control through mind control, thanks to Scientology / C organization and the CIA's rogue MK Ultra experiments. Americans are now becoming inbreeds at a much faster rate due to this BO attack on our own people, and has now permitted inbreeds with more worth than biological breeds of humans on their own land. If you are a person who has never inbreeded, stay away from them and evacuate the area. I've told this story before, but still feel like it needs to be reposted. I have always been a lurker, but felt like this was too good to pass up. I teach kindergarten in a rural area and we have parent-teacher conferences every year in the fall and spring. The fall conferences are more of a get to know you / build relationship and communication with parents. The spring conferences are when teachers are normally having to first broach subjects such as retention or SPED placement, as we have enough data at this point to present a valid case on paper. I had a student that when he came to my class was 5 years old and could hardly speak. He grunted and made noises in attempts to make words, but was barely understandable. Obviously, this is a red flag and he's placed into speech therapy immediately, and he's SPED tested as well. As we progress through the year, I notice his speech is starting to get much easier to understand, from where he started at least, but that he is not growing academically. He's not only been in intervention groups with me, but has been pulled into SPED intervention groups as well, and splits 50-50 of his time between our classroom and phys. We come to our spring parent-teacher conference. I'm a little nervous about talking to these parents because they did not come to the conference in the fall and communication from them has been lacking at best. The time comes, mom and dad both show up and have a seat. Our conferences are only 15 minutes long, so not much time to beat around the bush. I praise their child's growth in speech and how much he has matured over the school year. He's a great kid and gets along with everyone really well and all that. I proceed to inform the parents that his test scores are showing minimal improvement throughout the school year. I show them graphs, spreadsheets, examples of work, etc. to try and paint this picture for them. They just keep saying they don't understand. I say, for example, when X came to me in August, he could not identify a single letter of the alphabet or write his name. Now, it's the end of February and he can identify 8 letters and write his name correctly 50% of the time. I want to acknowledge his growth while also making sure they realize he is not where he should be. They continue with the "we don't understand" and dad starts to get emotional. He collects himself and asks, what do we need to do to help him? I run down a list of activities they can try at home. Not the first time they've been given this information. Mom starts to get upset and asks if maybe the test is just too hard. I offer to show them exactly how a test is conducted. I have a flip chart on my table that shows one letter at a time. I can choose uppercase or lowercase based on which way I turn it. To be considered fluent, students have to say the name of whatever letter is shown to them within 4 seconds. If they can't, or they get it wrong, they are not fluent with that letter. I explain this to the parents and just randomly flip to a letter and count to 4. The letter I randomly flip to is an uppercase Y as I finish counting to 4 and telling them their son is unable to name this letter in that time. Dad's face goes red and he starts shaking his head. I ask if everything is okay and he says, I just don't believe you. I know my son knows that letter. I show him months worth of tests and data and say in this setting and time limit, he does not know it well enough to be considered fluent. Dad pounds his fist on the desk and says, you're wrong. I know he knows that letter. Every fucking morning when I'm driving him to school he just keeps asking my backquote why. At this point all I can do is look down at my desk to keep from laughing. The conference is very quickly wrapped up with him still arguing about the fact that his son definitely knows the letter Y and that obviously my testing is flawed. TLDR, kindergarten teacher tells parent at P/T conference that his son doesn't know the letter Y. Dad belligerently yells he does because he asks me backquote why. In the car every morning. She's not stupid, but she went above and beyond stupid last week. We were at Home Depot to get some keys copied. We had 2, needed a total of 5. I told her that because I already had a blank, we just needed to buy 2. No, we need 5. She replied, I have a blank already. We buy 2, then have 3 cut. But we need to buy 3. I sighed and physically held up my key and my blank. I have a key. You have a key. We have a blank. We need 2 more blanks. We get the 3 blanks, cut 5 keys. 5 keys? No, we need 3. Listen. We're buying 2 blanks. I have a 3rd blank. The 3 blanks are getting cut. We have 2 keys already, 2 plus 3 is 5. Then why are we buying so many keys? We want 5 keys. I have a blank. We buy 2, cut 3. OHHHH, why didn't you just say that? I did. I worked in a fish and chip restaurant a few summers while I was in uni. Due to them being in a popular seaside town, lots of old people would come in. I had one engagement that went like this. I got to collect the plate of a woman that has had haddock and chips. Me, how was it, ma'am? Huh, oh, it was lovely. Me, I'm glad to hear it. Huh, but it wasn't haddock. At this point I look down at the plate and lo and behold, there is the haddock skin staring us both in the face. Haddock has distinctive line running down its skin, so it's impossible to miss, also coupled with the fact the only other fish are served with skin on was place and hadn't just eaten a flat fish. Me, I can assure you it was. The skin is even on your plate. Huh. Enters Karen mode. Her, I'm from Hull. I know my fish. Hull is a town that hasn't had large scale fishing for over 50 years due to the cod wars. Me, well, I'm glad you enjoyed it anyway. It baffled me that she could see the evidence in front of her face and not see why she was wrong. As a minimum wage waiter, I was not paid enough. Tell this woman she didn't know was a blooming haddock was, despite being at least 60 years old. I also once had a friend go into a chippy and legitimately ask whether or not they did fish and chips. I just about died from secondhand embarrassment on that one. About 2 months ago, during the lockdown where I live, I was working, and this lady wanted to pay contactless. In Belgium this is possible for any amount less than €50 and you don't have to enter your code. So basically you don't need to touch anything, which is nice because, you know, the virus. But there is a limit on how often you can do this. So after a while you have to enter your code and thus touch the machine. So this lady wanted to pay contactless, and when she held her card against her machine there was a signal on the screen, of which I knew by then that meant she had to insert her card and enter her code. She then proceeded to tell me that that wasn't paying contactless, and I told her that it wouldn't work that way, and then she got mad at me just doing my job, and finally this woman decided it was a better idea to pay cash than to touch a machine we disinfect a lot. I really couldn't wrap my head around that. Also, this lady got mad at us, this was prior to this incident, for not having alcohol gel available for the customers. And I know this was ideal, and we need to protect everyone, but there simply wasn't any alcohol gel available anywhere, because everyone was buying it. So she said to my boss, you can still buy it online, and my boss then asked, do you know where? Because I couldn't find any, and she just replied with, just search online. Like she didn't understand the fact that all of the alcohol gel was just sold out everywhere. I've told these two stories before, and normally people don't believe them, but they're true. I used to work at a law firm that had a really lovely receptionist. She was always happy, very friendly, and in many respects just the sort of person you'd want greeting your clients, answering the phone, etc. However, she was also astonishingly dumb. On one occasion, one of the lawyers collapsed in her office when speaking a partner. The partner grabbed the desk phone and told the receptionist to get an ambulance, then gave first aid. The receptionist then called directory inquiries to ask for the phone number for the ambulances. This is in the UK, where to call any emergency service you simply dial 999, something drilled into us all since early childhood. The firm was so horrified that the person they pay to answer phone calls was incapable of calling the emergency services that they sent her on a course for doing exactly that, an online training. Surely, I can't believe there are courses run for dialing 999. Afterwards she printed out her certificate and framed it behind her reception desk. It was a sore point amongst the partnership, who didn't really think that set the correct tone for the competence of what was a pretty expensive law firm, but equally they didn't feel able to ask her to take it down. The second story is less verifiable, but knowing the lady I don't doubt that it is true. She told me herself, and there is no way she has the guile or imagination to make it up. It happened shortly after the first. She lives in a flat by herself. I've often wondered how, and one morning woke to find that however hard she pulled her bedroom door wouldn't open. Assuming the catch had broken, and mindful of her new qualification, she called 999 and asked for the fire brigade. They pitched up and were able to open the door by swinging it in the opposite direction. Unable to open it by pulling, she hadn't thought to try pushing. My first job was at a gluten-free specialty bakery. I'm 17 years old at the time. One day a lady comes in with her toddler to check out our products. She's asking me a bunch of questions about allergens and goes, which items don't have eggs? I need to make sure everything is dairy free for my child. I couldn't tell if this mother was serious or not about eggs being dairy. In my customer service voice I proceed with, no worries there, because eggs aren't a dairy product. I think you may be confusing it as dairy, since it is an animal product like dairy. Dairy products are made with milk from mammals and contain the lactose sugar, which is what people are intolerant to. Simple enough explanation, right? No. This lady insists that eggs are dairy. She starts insulting my capability for the job. Mind you, I'm the only one in the shop, since it was an hour before closing. She ends up having her EGGSRE dairy tantrum and exits the store without buying anything. Sometimes I think about her still, because she's depriving her kid of eggs for no goddamn reason. She probably thinks mayo is dairy as well. I work at a motel with an outdoor pool. Two local families checked in on this particular day simply to use the pool, which is pretty common. Except it was storming that day. The reservation they made was through a third party like Expedia. For the record, never ever use third party booking sites, and so it was non-cancelable and non-refundable. The two idiots of the day were the two moms of those families. Every 45 minutes or so of my shift they would ask if I could open the pool because the rain had stopped, even though you could clearly see rain droplets on the surface of the pool and lightning in the sky. Over the course of the day, they both became more and more belligerent with me over this, saying their kids only wanted to swim, just a quick jump in, jump out, yelling at me to call my supervisor, and that this was harassment, and I was going to get fired. At one point, when they had me outside to see if I could open up the pool, one mom joked that she was getting tired of her kids whining to her about the pool, and that she was going to let them come sit in the lobby so they could whine at me, to which I responded that that would be perfectly fine, and that I could change our TV to cartoons for them if they wanted to come sit in the lobby, and she did not like that. Mom, why won't you open the pool? We did the right thing and booked these rooms specifically to use the pool when we could have just come and jumped in without paying. Open the pool. Me, I cannot do that, as it is storming outside, and to swim during a storm is hazardous to one's health. Mom, why? Why is it bad for you? Me, Beck. Mom, and do not insult my intelligence. Okay, I'm very smart. I have a degree. Do not insult my intelligence. Me. Then I don't know how to explain to you that lightning is attracted to bodies of water, and if your kids were in said body of water when it happened to be struck, then mom, do not insult my intelligence. I just walked back inside. I used to work with a woman who was my manager, painfully. She was the dumbest person I have ever met, and came out with some real crackers that, if I had not heard, would not believe were real. I heard her once tell someone she had requested electrocution lessons so she could learn to talk proper. On a trip to IKEA to buy some nice pictures to hang around the office, she picked a nice one out she said she had found of Chelsea Harbour. One of the other managers with her just looked at her dumbfounded and said, "That's the Eiffel Tower, you prat." She said her car needed the water topping up and couldn't figure it out. I felt sorry for her and offered to show her how to do it. She popped open the bonnet, and her car had a fucking great big label for water and oil, where you top it up. I wasn't really sure if she was having me on. There are more, but my favorite by far was the time she told me I was wrong when I said Africa was a continent, because according to her it is a country in Asia. She was a 35-year-old woman, who I have no idea how the hell she even managed to dress herself in the morning. She also had this high-pitched cackling laugh that could probably shatter glass, and to top it off she was really not a very nice person. Oh, I've got another one. At my work we sell farm equipment and pet foods. Basically it's a country store. So a customer comes in and asks for dog food. Not a problem usually, but when I ask for a brand or flavor to narrow down my search he says, oh, it's £8 a while ago, but he can't remember when. Which narrows the search down by 10%, because we have around 100 dog food brands that have been £8 in the past. but I try to find it, but can't, so I ask if he has a loyalty card, so I can backtrack what he's bought. He didn't have one, so I ask if he remembers the color or any details on the bag. He doesn't, then drops this bombshell: I don't really have a brand in mind, I just thought I could come in and just buy a bag. That's okay if any of our stock was £8 at the time, so I mention nothing we have anymore is £8, unless he wants damaged stock. He then provides to shout angrily that I should reduce a £20 bag to £8 for him. I tell him a cheap bag is outside for half that price, but I won't reduce it to £8. After a minute of me trying to get him to either leave or get some stuff, I ended up using the "silent alarm" to get security over. We have two custom ones, one goes straight to the police in case we're robbed or assaulted, and the other goes to security for customers we don't want to escalate things with. I did this because he was a rich gypsy, so although he has the money to buy most of our stock, he was trying to be difficult. I know this because I dated his sister but never met him. She wasn't a gypsy, she had a house. I'm 5,11 but not muscular build, but can lift my 18-stone father. So if I chucked him out it would probably turn into a fight. Linking into the previous one, I was having a rough day for personal reasons, so I was ready to break his jaw. I knew my friend had issues. Every week he'd spout some new conspiracy theory. Flat Earth looks flat to him. He could prove it, but he had to take his daughter swimming. His words: gravity. Nope. Just a theory. I asked what his explanation was. His eyes sort of stared into the distance, and he said butterflies, while flapping his hands like a little pair of wings. Women. A woman cannot be stronger / faster / smarter than any man. If that is the case, then drugs are involved. Women part 2. Do you think women are physically the same as men? I started pointing out the few but obviously differences. No. I mean, like, do they have biceps and triceps etc.? The same muscles? He used to stand on a bodybuilding stage next to them. The answer should be obvious. Earth's rotation. He found out, at the age of 60, that the earth rotates. I looked at him when he told me this. He got angry. You didn't know this? He shouted. He stood up and started jumping up and down on the floor. Look. It's not moving under my feet. It can't be rotating. The firmament. Since gravity doesn't exist in his world, then something must hold the atmosphere in, like a pressure cooker. His answer: the firmament. Apparently that's what the stars are stuck into as well. The sun. Speaking of stars, the sun is about 6,000 miles away. That sounds about right. Space. We haven't been, because there is no air to push against. Construction. I lent him a drill so he could mount a hanging basket outside his front door. All the neighbors were watching me thinking what a great guy I was. It fell down the following day. He did not attempt to put it back up. A short while later he talked about building an extension onto his house. He would do it. I quote, "It will have walls, a roof, windows and a door. There will be electricity." He would do it himself. I pointed out that he had zero experience or skills in construction and that planning permission and a building warrant would be required. No, he would build it under a giant tent. No one would see him build it. Of course it never happened. Workshop. He wanted a workshop. He would build it. Easy, he said. It might take him a few hours to get the hang of bricklaying. In the end he paid his neighbor £8,000 to build it. A year later he has not been inside. Criminal mastermind. He was going to find a backdoor into ATMs and get them to pay out to him. Breaking Bad. He would steal money from drug dealers. They wouldn't go to the police because they wouldn't want to get caught. Giant intellect. Scored over 100 on an IQ test when he was 11. He was going to invent something in his backyard and get rich. This would give his children financial freedom. A nice sentiment, but it was another fantasy. Fantasies. Where do I start? Most of us daydream and keep it to ourselves. He will blur the line between daydreams and reality. Suddenly I'm hearing stories of how he will shoot people with high-powered laser weapons. Cue sound effects. Employment. He hasn't gone into work in 15 years by my reckoning. For a number of years before that he refused the projects handed to him, so he says. Somehow this company still continue to employ and pay him? He stays at home and picks his kids up from school or plays with the young children in the local park. The hot young mothers look over at me admiringly. They think I'm a great guy and wish that I was the father of their children. I could go on, but you get the picture. 20 years ago, I was a bartender at a high-end steakhouse/oyster bar. Very high-income clientele in a swanky Westchester County suburb of New York City. It was a hot humid summer Friday night, and the place was crowded as hell, at least 3 deep at the bar, lines out the door for tables. The air conditioning was blasting to keep the interior temperature comfortable, and the chaos behind the bar and the crowded tables had the staff in perpetual motion to keep up. One of the patrons, a middle-aged trophy wife, was motioning to me through the chaos. I can't recall the conversation word for word, but this dolt was sitting by an air conditioning duct and wanted me to turn the air off because it was making her cold. Trying to explain the many reasons to Karen why she needed to move herself instead was impossible with the craziness all about us, and she was oblivious to the scores of people waving money at me trying to order drinks because she was the center of the universe. I called the floor manager over and genuinely felt bad as this poor bastard tried to appear like he cared that she was uncomfortable, and explained that if he turned off the air conditioning in August, that the temperature would go from 70 to 85 in a hot minute with the house at capacity. There is no stupid like affluent, rich bimbo stupid, and I'm sure part of her meal was comped for her trouble. I'm a mechanic and our workshop has been open throughout this whole COVID shit. We've been wearing masks all day, and it was tiring. We were really happy when the cases went down and we could pull off our masks during work. I don't know how many mechanics are reading this, but we usually have pretty stupid costumers sometimes. However, we were just about to meet the worst of them. Like, seriously the worst. Last week on Thursday, an impulse drove up. A man stepped out, went up to us, and asked where he could make an appointment. His car died while he was on the way to an important meeting. We didn't have anything to do, so one of us took his car into the workshop and we all kind of gathered around to look for the issue. The costumer follows us. He talked with us a bit, how shit the traffic is, and stuff like that. He then continued to complain that he'll miss his important thing. One of the mechanics asked him what that thing was. He answered, without hesitating, I was on my way to the doctor to test me for COVID-19. I had contact with someone who got infected, and I'm also showing symptoms, so I thought it would be better to check. We didn't hesitate either, and told him to fuck off. He didn't wear a mask, and didn't care to tell us beforehand that he might have COVID-19. He left and was pretty pissed, but I think he knew he was in the wrong, because we didn't hear of any complaints afterwards. But he was a paying costumer, so we continued to work on his car. He picked his car up next day, without wearing a mask of course. I'm not surprised that the active cases in my country are going up again. Ever heard the tale of Kevin? It's not uncommon as a teacher to have students who are a bit behind the curve in certain aspects, but 99.99999% of the time they are keen on something. They might not understand how to identify a noun or what theme is, but they somehow know how to make a mean plate of nachos. You learn pretty quick to not judge fish for their tree climbing ability, yeah no? I thought this was the rule when I was teaching, until I met Kevin. Kevin isn't his real name, but it doesn't matter, because he can't spell it anyway. Kevin was a student of mine during my last year of teaching. He came to my classroom with very little to show for his academic past. He had moved a few times and thus was missing a lot of typical test scores that we used to try and ballpark their ability. Don't worry, it was a ballpark. We didn't make major decisions until we actually had a chance to talk and work with a student for a bit. I thought that's fine. I'll just do some one-on-one with Kevin and see what's up. One-on-one with Kevin was like conversing with someone who'd forgotten everything in a freak, if not impossible, amnesia incident. There was no evidence that he had learned anything past the 2nd grade, and now he was in 9th grade. Flabbergasted, I figured we needed to get more serious with this. If he was going to be in my class, I needed to know why and how. I decided to meet with him, his guidance counselor, his parents, and another teacher to see what was really going on. This is where it all became clear. It was by some incredible fluke that his family hadn't been wiped off the face of the earth years ago. Odds are his entire heritage was based on blind luck and some type of sick divine intervention that saves his family every time a threat presents itself. Kevin was the genetic pinnacle of this null achievement. Even my instructional lead, a woman who could find a redeeming tray in a Balrog, failed to see any reason this kid or his family should be alive today. So here's a list of events that made it abundantly clear that God exists, and he's laughing uncontrollably. Kevin frequently forgot when/where class was. On more than one occasion, I had to retrieve him from other classrooms. Kevin ate an entire 24-pack of crayons, puked, and then did it again the next day. This is 9th grade. I have no idea where he got crayons. Kevin's dad wrote tuition checks and mailed them to me, his English teacher. This was a public school. When I gave it back to Kevin, voided, to give to his dad with a brief note explaining that this is a public school, Kevin got in trouble for trying to spend it at 711 after school. Kevin was removed from the culinary arts program after leaving a cutting board on the gas stove and starting a fire. Twice Kevin threw his lunch at the school resource officer and tried to run away. He ran into a door and insisted it wasn't him. Kevin stole my phone during class. I called it. It rang. He denied that it was ringing. Not that it wasn't his. Not that he did it. No, he denied that the phone was actually ringing. He tried it 3 times before the end of the year. Kevin called the basketball coach a motherfucking bitch during gym. Basketball tryouts were that afternoon. Kevin tried out. It didn't go well. Kevin's mom could never remember which school he went to. She missed several meetings because she drove to other schools, none of which he ever went to. Kevin tased himself in the neck before a football game. Kevin kept a bottle of orange Kool-Aid in his backpack for about 4 months. He thought it would turn into alcohol. He drank it during homeroom and threw up. Kevin said the N-word a lot. Kevin was white. The high school was 84% black. Kevin got beat up a lot. Kevin stole another student's iPhone and tried to sell it back to them. Kevin didn't understand that his grade was dependent on tests, quizzes, homework, class walk, and participation. Kevin finished his first semester with a 3% average. He tried to bribe me with $11. Kevin spit on a girl and said you should get out of those wet clothes. The girl was the Spanish student teacher. Kevin didn't know dogs and cats were different animals. Kevin tried to download porn onto a computer in the library at the circulation desk while he was logged on. Kevin asked a girl to prom. He was in 9th grade and freshmen don't go to prom by asking for her phone number and then texting her his address. Kevin got gum in his hair constantly. Kevin regularly tried to cheat on assignments by knocking the pile over, grabbing one before I had picked them all up, and then writing its name on it wherever there was room. Kevin had several allergies, but neither his parents nor he could remember what they were. They were very concerned that the holiday party at high school, we don't have those, would have peanuts. When they finally got a doctor's note, he was allergic to amoxicillin. Kevin and his parents took a trip to Nassau. How the fuck did they even get airline tickets and forgot all their luggage at home? I didn't believe him when he told me until I talked to him mom, who told me first thing when I saw her at the weekly meeting. Kevin's grandfather apparently died in a chainsaw accident. I can only assume God was looking the other way that day. Credit goes to /you/know that. Used to make jewelry and sometimes I had to talk to customers in the shop if there weren't enough people, since I knew all about the jewelry as I made most of it. Had a woman come in and argue with me about a ring, white gold with a pink sapphire. Woman, how much is this pink diamond ring? Me, it's a sapphire and it's XXX.XX. Woman, no, this pink diamond. Sapphires are blue. Me, that is a sapphire. Sapphires can be pink. Woman, why is it so expensive then, if it's only a sapphire and silvering? Me, because it is white gold. Woman, but gold is yellow. Me. Woman, you don't know what you're talking about. I want to talk to a senior seller. Me, I bloody made the ring. Woman. At which point my boss settles over and tells me to go back in the workshop. Later tells me I don't have to go in the shop anymore. I see that as a win. Tech support. We had an abusive script. If customer swore, was obscene, etc. we'd give them 3 readings of the script, then we were in the clear to hang up on them. I jaff if people swore. It's frustrating when tech doesn't work and you gotta call someone. Say whatever you want, as long as I'm not your target, we cool. One night we had a 40 to 70 minute queue time, and I answered a call and do my intro. None of this GDsh, TS queuing working. As I said, usually I jaff, but I heard it in her voice. She wasn't going to get it under control, and I was going to be dealing with indiscriminate rage, and I didn't really feel like it. So, I'm sorry ma'am, but if you keep talking like that I will have to disconnect this call. I'll end this queuing call. Slam. She waited 40 plus minutes to get someone on the phone to help her, then disconnected on her end after a maybe 10-second exchange. Didn't give me any info. And she's going to have to wait that same amount of time to get a hold of anyone else. I made the right decision to script her. Edit. Some typos. I had this encounter with my old friend in 8th grade. A few of my friends and her were having a conversation about so random fact about how the flag on the moon moved weirdly when it was placed into the ground. But it seemed that she wasn't really paying attention with the conversation much and said this incredible sentence. Did you know you could fly to the sun and land on it when it's nighttime? Everyone in the classroom had heard what she said and just froze for about 10s before we burst out laughing. But she didn't know why. So one of us had to explain to her how the sun works and that we just cannot simply land on the sun. Then she said, no, you just land on the other side of the sun where it is colder. Obviously we are on the hotter side of the sun and can burn up. Funny thing was the English teacher was listening through the whole conversation and jumped in to reply to her comment, saying you should be the first one to try and tell us how that goes. That was the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life, and hope you enjoy reading it. Working as a cashier, I had a lady try and buy beer. Now this was the day before the 4th of July. In America, every single customer bought beer. Thus, every once in a while, we would remind everyone over the radio that we were required to ID everyone because of the COVID lockdown. So late in the day, and I'm about to get off. We know that it's a pain in the ass to ID customers, so if they look unprepared, we ask them for their driver's license, then scan everything else while they dig it out. Our registers cannot scan anything but an ID directly after scanning alcohol. Lady comes by, and when we get to the I need your ID, ma'am line, she digs out her phone, opens messages, and tries to open an image. I'm sitting there watching her double tap to react, try and save the image, etc. Finally she gets it open, and tells me that she had to order one online, and they told her it would be there soon, but I could use that one. First off, we have to scan the backs of the IDs. A picture of the front will do you no good. Second off, we are not allowed to use a picture at all. Thirdly, you can't order an ID online unless it's fake. I know because I went through all hell when my own ID got stolen. And finally, here's the best part. This lady looks 50 something, tells me that she's 57, that I shouldn't have to ID her just because of the coronavirus. That's an infringement of her rights, and the virus should be illegal. Furthermore, the picture of the ID she tried to tell me I could use was of a 43-year-old black woman. This lady was clearly white. I just don't know how she even survived to such a ripe old age. It must have been her natural genius. Oh yay. Finally one I can answer. I worked with a girl a few years ago that prided herself on being an educated, strong, woke individual. She was notorious for discussing everything from that week's fad diet, religion/philosophy, all the way to the political climate, all while we were a captive audience at our desks. One day, she was looking up pictures for her desktop background. I never said she was a hard worker. She stopped in the middle of looking at some mountains and asked me if I thought it was a real picture. I looked over at it and then did a quick Google search and figured out it was a picture of Mount Everest. It was like the third picture on Google image. I tell her it's real and that it's Mount Everest. She looks at me strange, so I tell her it's the tallest mountain peak in the world. She looks at me strange again. Is it taller than the sun? I made her repeat the question because I didn't believe what she was asking me. This girl went to an elite high school and a nationally revered historically black college, both of which she talked about constantly. She has produced children into this world. I spent the rest of the day telling her about various natural landmarks and blowing her mind. But there's a second round of stupid too. I told her there was a man-made wall in China that could be seen from space. It was called the Great Wall of China. She got real snippy with me and said, "I've heard of that one, duh. It's the one with all the names on it from the wars." She was dead serious. Her and her husband were going to Miami to party about a week after this conversation, so I spent the remainder of my day talking about the Bermuda Triangle. The Jamaican-born woman in our office laughed uncontrollably for days after thinking about this conversation. Briefly worked at a bookstore chain that has since closed. It was obvious to anyone with a brain who worked there that its days were numbered. Everything, orders, returns, was centrally generated based on the computerized stock levels, so nobody in the store made any decisions. They'd just take what arrived and put it on the shelves and take whatever they saw on a returns note off the shelves. Unfortunately, the automated order/return system was a catastrophe, but the store managers just followed it blindly. So I watched as one member of staff took piles of books down from the stockroom and put them on the shelves, while another member of staff, returns printout in hand, took piles of the same book off the shelves to be returned to the publisher. They spent hours doing this. This was not uncommon, and the whole place was like this. I mentioned this to a manager and he genuinely didn't understand that anything was amiss. Thick as a rock. I gave up and left shortly thereafter. They constantly moaned about not having enough staff despite being massively overstaffed for their quite low stock levels, basically because most of the staff were kept constantly busy doing stuff like this. It was like watching people dig holes while their colleague filled them in. Oh man. So I worked with this kid for a while who was pretty dense. I was giving him a lift to site once, and he was like, "Can I smoke in your car?" I said yeah, just put the window down. Then he asks me if I have a lighter. No, I don't smoke. You smoke. You should have a lighter. Try the cig lighter from the car, but I've never used it, so I don't know if it works. So this kid pushes the lighter in and sits and stares at it like it's going to do a trick until it pops out. He pulls the lighter out and, sitting with his cig in one hand and the lighter in the other, he says to me, "Has it worked?" I told him I didn't know, so to test if it's worked he doesn't try lighting the cig. He just puts the lighter on his bare lip and burns the fuck out of himself. Then there was a story a mate of mine told me about a lad who worked for her brother. He'd just started and the gaffer had sent him off to a cafe to get a round of butties. Gaffer says, "What you going to have?" To the kid, who says he's got no money. Gaffer lends him a tenner and says to get himself something, and this lad toddles off to the cafe. He comes back and hands this on his round, but doesn't have one himself, and the gaffer is like, "Where's your sandwich, and do I have any change?" This kid is just like, "Oh, I didn't get a sandwich, I bought myself a t-shirt." A week later the same lad is going to the shop for a drink, and one of the lads on site says, "Can you get me some cigs while you're there? Get me 20 Marlboro. If they don't have Marlboro, just get me anything." And the lad comes back and hands him a fucking pork pie because they didn't have Marlboro. This kid _fits I used to work with. He thought so differently that I wanted to make a podcast with him because of how insane he was. I'll try and give you an example, but I'm not the greatest at explaining things. I picked up an old hammer that Fitz was using to break down a pallet. The hammer was bent forward a great deal. Like, if you held the hammer straight up, the face of the hammer was tilted towards the ground and the forks were tilted up. I asked Fitz about it. "Dude, how'd you mess this happen up so bad? Were you trying to pry something up?" He said, "No, I was just hitting the pallet really hard." I responded, "Well, wouldn't that make it bend backwards, face pointing up, forks down?" "No, I was just hitting it super hard. It's a really old hammer," he said me. And another coworker, "Dude, what?" Fitz, "Yeah, I mean I was just hitting the pallet really hard. This hammer is like from the 80s. That doesn't explain why it would be bent forward. Like everyone on the job site." Fitz responds with the most asinine answer I've ever heard. "You're not listening. This hammer is from the 80s. Physics were different back then. Everyone is either bent over laughing for it or struck with how stupid the answer was. We ended up arguing with him about how physics never change, and that maybe our understanding of it changes and so on, but he wouldn't back down. He never backed down for the stupid shit he says. It's one of the things that made working fun. This kid fully believed that hitting something so hard would make an object bend forward instead of back. I know someone who I could write a book of these moments on, but here's my favorite story to this day. She'd given me a ride to pick up a car I was buying 6 hours away. We get there, I look it over and test drive it, and as I'm sealing the deal, she gets out of her car and starts giving it a thorough once over. She's pulling stuff like the handbook manual and repair logs out of the glove box and trying to hand it to the dude going, "These look important, don't forget them." I'm trying to talk to this guy about the car's history and she's interrupting us every 3 seconds asking if he forgot to take the cup holder that literally comes with the car or a half-used chapstick. Then as I'm writing the bill of sale using the trunk as a table, she hits the trunk release, walks over and just lifts it up. We are trying to grab the papers. Pen falls to the ground, key slide off. Now she's grabbing shit out of the trunk and going, "What's this? Do you need it back?" We are like, "That's brake fluid, those are ode flares, that's a tire iron, all that belongs in the car." It ended up randomly dropping its strands on the highway, so I called her and told her to turn around because my transmission dropped. She was amidst being pulled over when I'd called her, and she brought the cop with her. He writes her a ticket and comes flying up, lights and siren ablaze, because he was told that I had parts of my car all over the highway. I guess she thought a trans dropping literally means it falls out of your car. Anyway, while waiting for the tow truck she has to pee and asks the cop, who decided to wait for the wrecker with us, if she's allowed to pee in the woods along the highway. He's like, "I guess." LMAO. She gets back into her car, where I'm sitting, and everything is on. Headlights, interior lights, radio, heater, etc. The heater is feeling a bit not heaty though, and it was freezing cold outside, so I go to adjust it, and it's already on maximum. Then I notice it's because her engine isn't running. I'm like, "Hey, you should start your car if you've got your heater and lights and stuff on." She's like, "Why?" So I explain how everything electric in your car runs off the battery when the engine isn't running, which can easily drain it. Plus the heater gets its heat from the engine, which means it'll keep blowing colder if it's not running. She acts like I'm being ridiculous, but starts the car and all night carries on normally. Until we start going on the highway, because she starts randomly cutting her headlights off, dropping down to half the speed limit, and swerving around blindly. After the second time she did it, I'm like, "Bro, what are you doing?" She goes, "I'm trying to conserve power. I don't want my headlights to drain my battery, and they're really bright, so they drain it really fast." I'm like, "WHAT?" I tried to re-explain that electrical accessories only drain battery power when the engine isn't running, but she realized she'd already made a stupid and stuck with her story that her headlights are so bright that sometimes they drain her battery, and that she definitely didn't just misunderstand the information I told her earlier. I was on a wilderness trip in the snow. We were building a Quincy for shelter. To make one, you pile up about 8 to 9 feet of snow, then dig up from the bottom and down from the top. The idea is that the floor is above the top of the entrance opening, so it traps warm air and is about in the middle of the pile. When you're done digging in from the top and bottom, you cover the top in with a mini igloo, snow bricks. They're comfortable shelters. It's a little easier if you put a bunch of stuff in a bag where the floor of the shelter should be, so when you hit it with a shovel you can just drag the bag of crap out through the entrance and you don't have to dig all that snow out crouched in the entrance tunnel. I went back to where we had all dumped our backpacks and got a huge duffel bag I carry on trips like this and stuffed everyone's sleeping bags, mine included, clothes bags etc. into the bag and dropped it in the pile of snow. When I was digging it out maybe 30 minutes later, one of my campmates asked me what was in the bag. I said all of our sleeping bags etc. Helps do this a lot faster, so we can get warm. Everything's in the duffel though, so no snow on anything. Works great. But my sleeping bag is warm, it will melt the snow and get wet. My dude, okay, never mind. I'm sorry, you're right. Let's pile all of the sleeping bags into a campfire and cook some dinner over them, you fucking halfwit. My brother's girlfriend can't tell what's a joke. I was getting back into my brother's boat from swimming, and I asked for a towel, because I was told by my dad not to get the insides of a boat wet. She asks why I can't just get in, and I say, that will get the insides of a boat wet, you Jew. I learned the you Jew thing from my old, slightly racist friend group. She then tries to lecture me that she's a Christian, and cannot understand him joking. Every time I say I'm joking it gets replied with, but you called me a Jew. This is also how she makes comebacks. Somebody says something, she says no I don't or no I'm not, then acts like she said the funniest thing ever. I'm gonna keep going, because I just all around hate her. I had my girlfriend over, and while I was cooking mac and cheese, GF starts playfully hitting me, in full view of brother's girlfriend, so I turn around and playfully hit her. We both understood, we're being playful, nothing about that was condescending, or whatnot. The second I playfully hit her, brother's girlfriend grabbed a goddamn broomstick, and tried to whack me with it. I grab it, and she backs up. I appropriately respond, what the fuck are you doing? She says don't hit her. We were playing. I don't care, don't hit her. She hit me 10 times, but when I do it once you act like I'm a dad beater. That's straight up sexist. I don't care, don't hit her. She then furiously slams down the broom and leaves the kitchen. Me and my GF are just dumbfounded. I'm sorry if this doesn't really fit the question. I'm just so angry at her and want to get this off my chest. Late to the party. It's a bit long to explain, so bear with me. I worked in EDS at an engineering company, think it, but specifically for AutoCAD and MicroStation. We received an AutoCAD file from a client, and it contained a virus. Unfortunately, antivirus software can't really find AutoCAD viruses, because the AutoCAD uses AutoLisp, and is the only program to do so. Upon opening a file it would reset the zoom extents, how fast your mouse scroll would zoom in, and would double your file size. It did a couple other things, but those are the most noticeable effects. CAD files are large to begin with, as each drawing has nested files from each discipline, so it didn't take long before files became too large to work with and would just crash. The zoom extents thing was annoying, but it took a very simple command to fix until the next time the file was opened. It took a couple days to figure out that there was a virus and that it was replacing a startup file that the program uses when opening a file. Luckily each project had its own server, so it never spread past this one job. So now on to the other level of stupid person. One of the project leads was not happy about this issue and would yell at me every morning because her zoom extents were still fucked up, and every morning we couldn't understand why this kept happening. We had worked with it to make an automated program that went through the entire server and replaced the virus file with the appropriate one, folder by folder. There are hundreds of folders on this server. We had instructed everyone to leave their laptops at the office, hooked up to the server each night until the issue was resolved. Yet every morning I got yelled at, and I would check, and the server was still infected. Now project manager insisted she was leaving her laptop hooked up to the server at night. So obviously this was my fault and I wasn't doing my job. Turns out she would save a copy of a file, take her laptop home, remotely access the server, and honestly believed that would work. Completely not understanding that the infected files were saved on her laptop, and each morning when she would come in and replace the files with the ones she had worked on at home, she would reinfect the entire server over again. And I should add that this whole time we are sharing the files with the client and other firms involved in the project. So it wasn't just our servers that became reinfected every morning. In the end it took about 2 weeks from start to finish, and she never did apologize for my daily yelled at sessions. And as a bonus story, I came across this virus again at another job a couple years later. My boss refused to believe that I knew what was going on because this company didn't have an EDS department and outsourced their IT, who also didn't have an EDS department. I was a simple electrical CAD tech. I made the electrical CAD drawings, so there was no way I knew what was going on. Yeah, that virus was rampant at that firm. I used to work at an art gallery in a heavily trafficked tourist area with lots of bars surrounding it. We stayed open pretty late because my bosses were convinced drunk assholes would spend more money at night, but mostly we just had folks wandering in and asking if we sold cigarettes. One night, this lady comes up to the counter with a small print of a Shih Tzu dog. The piece was called Good Golly, Miss Molly. She slams this art down on the counter and goes, "I need this piece, but as a husky." To which I respond, "Oh, well we have this other print of a husky by the same artist." She yells at me, "No, no, no. I need this piece, but as a husky, because my dog's name is Molly." She just didn't understand that I couldn't magically wave a wand over the art and turn it into a husky, or that the title of the piece doesn't really matter at all once it's framed and hung up, and you never see the title again. A disturbing amount of people seemed to think we had a magic printer in the back that would make whatever art they wanted exist suddenly in whatever medium they wanted. I had people ask multiple times to make an art piece into a shirt for them, as if we were at Bubble or something. Honorable mention from that job, a guy asks what medium a piece is. I tell him it's digital art, printed out in a high quality digitally, and signed by the artist. And the dumbass gets angry and yells why is he selling it for so much, if he just downloaded it off the internet. My mother is a Kiwi, a person from New Zealand, and in New Zealand, there used to live this giant bird called a moa. There were several types, but most of them were huge, the largest being twice as tall as an ostrich. They were about 12 feet tall. They have been known to be extinct for 600 years, and the closest we have gotten to non-skeletal remains is one well-persevered foot that was found in a cave. So I'm at a college ice cream party for the criminal science department, and this guy spends probably at least a half hour trying to convince me that there are still moas roaming around New Zealand. He has never been to New Zealand, and I have. My mother has taught me about moas, and was also a college-educated teacher from New Zealand who probably taught students about moas as well as being completely obsessed with animals. She, as a child, had memorized the gestation period of every major mammal. This guy was genuinely convinced there are 12-foot giant birds roaming around an island nation with one of the most active and outdoorsy peoples in the world. He also was convinced that the giant eagles, which went extinct 500 years ago, that preyed on the moas, are still flying around New Zealand as well. He was trying to tell me that an eagle that could kill off a 12-foot tall ostrich-like bird and roosted on mountains was never spotted flying around by any of the hiking Kiwis who hiked on those very mountains. I could not convince this guy that this was not true. Eventually I just left, knowing that it is useless to argue with fools. Very frustrated and confused at how he could honestly believe this. This is not the height of stupid, but it really baffled me. Many years ago, when I lived in Washington state, I visited Vancouver, Canada for a huge exposition. On the last day I was buying lunch at a cafeteria. I had learned that the cash registers at the expo would allow you to pay in US dollars, though all change was in Canadian funds. All I had was a $20 US bill for a $7 meal, and not wanted excess Canadian funds that I'd have to exchange later. I asked the girl at the cash register if I could give her the $20 US bill and she could give me a $10 US bill and then give me Canadian change for just $10 US. She got a very confused look, stared at the cash register, tapped a few buttons. She then handed me my $20 US back, asterisk ANOTHER asterisk $10 US, Canadian change for my meal. When I handed her the $20 US back, she asterisk INSISTED asterisk, that was what a register told her to do, and that I asterisk HAD asterisk to keep it all. I asked her, did it seem right that I came in with the $20 US and that I was leaving with that $20 US bill, a $10 US bill, a few dollars in Canadian funds in my lunch? She again pointed at the cash register and insisted she had done it correctly. We went back and forth again a few times until I told her to take the $20 US back, put it into her till, and if she balanced out $20 over, wouldn't happen, she could keep it for a tip. The line had started backing up behind us during this time, and hearing laughter I looked back to see a law enforcement officer laughing uncontrollably. He finally had to order the girl to put the $20 in your till before she, reluctantly, took the $20 bill. We walked off with our lunch both shaking our heads sadly. 4 of them, from young teenage school years, roughly grades 6 to 10. 1. Delinquent shop class kid, Jody, who dressed similarly to Breakfast Club's Johnny Bender, was somehow on the restricted upper floor of the school building, snuck up a fire stair, or hid during off-hours maintenance. Fire alarms went off, either scheduled test or a panel fault, and he inexplicably jumped from a second or third story window, landing feet first on a teacher's car, destroying said car, and fracturing both ankles. When asked after the fact, he said, "I knew I was gonna be okay. I was wearing my heavy duty work boots." Honestly believed that the boots would protect his entire body. Prize winner. 2. Not even smart enough for shop class kid, Mark, kept talking about some pornography he'd found in the woods behind his house. We gradually figured out it must have been written porn, rather than video or photographic, because he repeatedly made reference to throwing up, and, after the third or fourth mention, it became clear that, via word of mouth, he had misunderstood masturbation for vomiting, as in vomiting all over one's own body to achieve gratification. Mark is now a Marine Corps powerlifter. 3. Supposedly honors level kid, Ken, eerie doppelganger for House of Lies Ben Schwartz, loudly mocked the rest of us for ordering large pizzas, as opposed to small, because they just cut them into 2 more slices. They're exactly the same otherwise. It's not worth the money. I guess he must have misheard some adults, possibly his parents, talking about how larger pizzas weren't a good deal, inch for inch, and badly mangled his interpretation. Got all indignant about how misinformed and stupid the rest of us were. 4. Social studies classmate, Damon, doing some report about the apocryphal dinosaur meteor story, assembled some poster board thing detailing how the meteor hit, and it caused lots of planetary chaos, but the resulting fires kept the dinosaurs warm for a good long time, so they did great for a while until the fires went out. I remember even our teacher was speechless. Let it pass by without comment.